across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. Where do we even start today? So much has happened since I was on air on Thursday. I mean, so much was happening while we were on air on Thursday. So many repercussions, so much we need to seriously talk about on this show, and we're going to get to all of it, and I cannot wait to hear your calls because, my God, it'd be good to talk to some sane people because I don't know if you've made the mistake of seeing any BBC or Sky over the weekend or ITV, but if you weren't fuming all weekend, why weren't you? So we are going to be talking about everything where we are right now in this country, and the whole, I think we're done with the looking back with anger thing. I was done with that in around 2016, 2017, probably actually 2005 at 7/7, but maybe the rest of the country took a little bit longer to catch up with me. But anyway, we are done with that, and we're going to talk about action today. So look, whether you are listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Thanks for sticking with us. If you do miss anything of the show, if you missed anything from last week, you can go to my YouTube page. We called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, specifically going to talk about police to get new powers to curb repeat protests. Oh, is this a massive assault on freedom of speech? Well, the thing is, freedom of speech does have some rules around it. This comes after a pro-Palestinian activist ignored pleas not to stage numerous demonstrations, by the way, not just on Saturday, but on Friday and Sunday as well. Protesters chanted anti-Semitic slogans, carried anti-Semitic placards and banners. I mean, swastikas, usually a giveaway, aren't they? Usually a giveaway. Kemi Badenoch has condemned the UK's tolerance of radical Islamism after the Manchester synagogue attack, warning that pro-Pal marches and protests, like shouting things like globalise the Intifada, do incite hatred against Jews. So is everyone now on the same page on this? Well, all the sane people. Meanwhile, it has been revealed that the Manchester synagogue terror attacker Jihad al-Shami was a follower of extremist hate preacher who had described Jews as animals. I know, we're all surprised. Oh, this is on top of the fact that he'd made death threats to an MP and was out on bail for rape. I mean, he was an all-round good guy. We should absolutely have kept him in the country, even if he hasn't now been shot dead by police, eh? Plus, I'm going to talk a bit about the Tory party conference. The Tories have demanded the PM must come clean over the collapse of the China spy case. This comes after it emerged that Jonathan Powell, one of the Prime Minister's closest advisers, told a Whitehall meeting the government could not call China an enemy in court. Apart from the fact that they are an enemy state, aren't they? All that, plenty more besides coming up, including some of the big Tory announcements on no benefits for foreigners. Should have thought of that a few years ago. Weren't you in office for 14 years? Better late than never. Mass deportations, that's good to hear as well. But also they're talking about a rather stupid policy about basically giving young workers who get onto the housing ladder £5,000 back from the national insurance for a deposit. So thereby just simply, as always, just raising house prices once again. What we need is to build more houses. I don't know about you lot, I'm in a right old mood today. I'm genuinely so angry at all of the authorities in this country, so angry at so many of the political parties, so angry at just the police, so angry at so many people, but mostly the people who thought it was appropriate to go and protest, I'm not quite sure what they were protesting, on the streets on Friday, in train stations, stopping people going about their lawful business. Why were they not immediately tear-gassed and dragged out of the station? I do not know why. Protesting, supposedly, outside Downing Street, Trafalgar Square, you name it, protest after protest around the country. And what were those protesting against? Against Israel. Against Israel. Not one single protest that I saw, and I saw lots of clips online, didn't go to any of those to go and make my point in person because not sure I had the self-control to do that. But at least I know that about myself, eh? But not one single chant for Hamas to accept the peace plan on the table. Peace talks starting in Egypt today, not directly between the Hamas and the Israelis, but in separate rooms, but hopefully coming to a deal where we can see the hostages out and hopefully end the war in Gaza. Wouldn't that be great? No, there was no one on the streets of Britain in the last few days calling for the peace plan in Gaza. They were just simply calling on Israel to end the genocide that doesn't exist and displaying swastikas and shouting from the river to the sea, which is about the eradication of Israel. I mean, we know what these marches are about. We know what they're about, and we've known what they're about for a very, very long time. These people are the enemy. And I defended the right of these people to march for a very long time. I really did. It's been 2 years now. This is not about caring about babies in Gaza. Trust me, these people pretend they care about it, and they share the videos of children filmed by Hamas in great distress. This isn't about that. This is about them hating Jews. It's just that simple. And since when did we allow that? We have hate crimes. We have non-crime hate incidents. And people are being arrested for tweets, for stupid things they've said online, for the most mild comments. But organising marches on a regular basis, even after a terror attack, in the same city as that terror attack, when Jewish people are terrified of going to synagogue, being in their homes, told not to congregate. What sort of country are we? A first world country in the 21st century, the country that defeated Nazism, telling Jews, would you mind staying at home and not congregating because we can't protect you? As if that is remotely acceptable. No, the people who need to be dealt with are the people who mean that Jews need to be protected. Because those Jews, by the way, I know most people in this country aren't Jewish. Most of my audience probably aren't Jewish. I'm not Jewish. But the Jews and Israel in the Middle East are standing at the front line of the battle for Western civilization. And the sooner we get that, and the sooner we understand the threat, both abroad and at home, the sooner we will deal with it. But deal with it we must. And to tell you why? Because we don't have a choice. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. In particular, I want to hear from you. Should these protests be banned? Basically, the powers going to be given to the police, we understand, from the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, far too late to ban all these repeat protests after those rallies went ahead after the synagogue terror attack. What do you make of that? Do you think they should be? Do you think they shouldn't be? Is it an attack on free speech? I want to hear your thoughts. First, let's get the thoughts of Claire Pearsall. She's a former Conservative government advisor, and she very much preferred to come and join us in the studio here and go to Conservative Party conference in Manchester. We also decided to wear matching outfits today, both in blue. Yes. Anyway, good morning to you. Sorry, I've yapped on for quite a long time, but my God, there's been a lot to say since Thursday. Now, you were with me in the studio on Thursday when with the horror of this synagogue attack.
No, it was the day before. I was listening
apologies.
to you. I was listening to you on Thursday.
I thought my brain's gone. It's all bundled into one. Where are you on all of this, really?
It's horrendous, and I share your anger, and I was really angry last week, and over the weekend I've moved into what my mother would have lovingly referred to as severe disappointment, where you just want to hide your head in your hands and say, what on earth are we doing as a country, telling a community of people to just stay at home? Just don't go out anywhere.
Black people, would you mind awfully staying at home?
Well,
because there might be some attack. Black people, would you mind? Would you mind just staying at home? I mean, can you imagine the outcry? Don't congregate in together because you might be at risk. Do you think that anyone would think that was acceptable?
Well, they wouldn't. It's the same as saying a group of women don't congregate together, don't go out.
They do tell us that, to be fair.
We don't pay much attention to because I still go out. But it's, why are we doing this? Why are we allowing week after week after week anti-Semitism to go out of control, for the Jewish community to be targeted, to be abused, to be scared and to be attacked? And that's all right.
But
why?
But Israel. That's what I mean. Genuinely, I cannot get over how much TV I've seen this weekend. I always like to look at lots of different channels, so I don't stay in my bubble. And the amount of times it was like, well, you mustn't hold the Jewish people in Britain to account for what the Israeli government does. Well, of course not. But that's literally what those people are doing. I mean, the man jihad. I mean, there were clues, people. His father came from Syria and he called his son Jihad al-Shami, the terrorist, thankfully dead. And may you rot in hell, sir. May you rot in hell. He called you. There were so many clues about that he was a risk. I mean, I think the death threats to an MP. Yeah. I think out on bail for rape. Oh, what's funny is you don't get out on bail if you write a tweet, but you get out on bail if you're alleged rapist. I mean, interesting choice there from the from the CPS and the police, but you followed a hate preacher. I mean, he was known, it was obvious, but I mean, he said, you know, apparently one of the things he shouted, and people who were holding the door of that synagogue closed to him while he was trying to get in was, you know, this is for the children. This is for the children. What is he talking about? He's talking about the children in Gaza, right?
Yeah.
Who everyone claims are being genocided by the Israeli government. No, they're not. But when those lies are perpetrated by the British media and by the BBC, of all places, most trusted broadcaster in the world, and it's a lie, and there's not a single presenter or war reporter on that station that doesn't know it's a lie. I defy them. They are too experienced to think that what's happening in Gaza is extraordinary in any way other than the IDF has a lower rate of civilian deaths to combatant deaths than any war ever. Not a higher one, a lower one. And they're still perpetrating that lie. And that lie has fed into this guy.
And it has, and you can see the clues were there. When you look at the sort of reports on his past, he started showing an interest in Islam in 2018.
But Islamic is extremist Islam.
Extreme. So he had not been able to hold down a steady job. He dropped out of university. He was smoking marijuana. He was having an unhealthy interest in online Islamic.
I mean, he's literally classic, but not referred to prevent.
Absolutely. And now I'm prevent trained. I have to do that as part of my school governor role. So I have been through my prevent training, and that is one of the red flags right at the beginning. This is not an unusual thing to have, and he should have been flagged up. His family should have flagged him up. So should the university for dropping out, because that's another sheer sign of this kind of behaviour. But what do? We look at that and say, oh, well, you know, lessons must be learned. Well, I'm so sick of it. So sick of that.
I mean, they're not. I remember being on air here in 2017 after the Manchester attack, and they were doing that "Don't look back in anger" nonsense, and the candles and things. Look, whatever the victims and their families need to cope, you do you. I'm not judging you. Precisely. But the idea that our politicians, our police and everyone else should talk about community cohesion and not looking back in anger. No, we should be angry. We should have been bloody angry from 2005 onwards with the 7/7 attacks. Yeah, and we have imported this issue. And I'll go through it a little bit later in the show. But genuinely, virtually, not all, but virtually every single terror attack in this country has been perpetrated by someone who has either come to Britain themselves or from abroad, usually from, you know, a Middle Eastern country, North African country or Pakistan, or they have been brought as children by parents from those countries, and then we're told, oh, they're homegrown Islamists. Sort of homegrown. I mean, you know, like this guy, Jihad al-Shami, he was British, brilliant. He was given British nationality at the age of 16. His parents came from Syria. I mean, again, he was called Jihad. Do you know what? I mean, oh, it means struggle, yeah, of course. And the Met Police have told us, haven't they? Oh, jihad. It doesn't mean, you know, holy war against Jews. Of course it doesn't. I mean, well, it does. I mean, it does. It's one of its many meanings. I mean, imagine how we would look on someone who called their kid Adolf.
Yes.
It's like the fact that, you know, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of the Hamas October the 7th attacks. Big increase in children, little boys in this country being called Yahya. In the last couple of years. I wonder why that is. Oh, that's a nice name. That's a nice name. We should call our kid that. There are clues, guys. There are clues. The people on the streets are the clues. You know the people I hate the most of this? Genuinely. It's the Phoebes. It's those stupid little posh girls and little posh, I don't know, the Tristrams or whatever they are. Those little privileged little twits. Not the Val I want to use. Who stand there and they're all sort of like, oh, we're so cool, we're so like, oh, we've got all the virtue signals, we've got all the flags in our bios. They believe every bit of nonsense. These people have gone to the top private schools often and barely literate. I mean, God knows what your parents must be thinking, what a waste of money. And they prance around. They're at every single demo going, because I'm not sure they've got a job, because we're paying for them, no doubt. But I mean, these kids, I mean, and they know better. They know better, and they lead these marches. They're happy to. If you were on a march where someone has got a banner saying, you know, from the river to the sea, that means we want to annihilate Israel and all the Jews. It's a Hamas slogan. If you're on a march where someone has got a swastika on and also referring to the Jews as Nazis, you don't want to be on that march. If you're on a march that is the same day or the day after or the 2 days after a terror attack on the very people who you apparently blame for the thing you're marching against, you don't want to be on that march. And if you're on a march when there's a peace plan that one side has accepted in a war that you claim is killing genociding an entire people and killing innocent babies. You claim this is the most awful war and there's starvation and genocide going on. If you are not on that march calling for one thing only, which is Hamas, you must accept that peace deal. As I said, you don't care about the babies dying, you care about hating Jews. That's all it is. That's all it is. There's no other explanation, is there?
Well, of course there isn't, but these are the same people that will then go and protest about climate change, and they'll go and
just move,
chain themselves to trees. It's the Sebastian.
It's trans.
It is. It's the Sebastians and the Tarquins and the Phoebes who have done gender studies at Polytechnic. It's those people. I can't stand them because they will just go from cause to cause to cause without having any idea what it is they're actually protesting against.
Again, here's thing. Which river, which sea? Yeah. There's your first question. Yeah. And wasn't it interesting, Matthew Said, who's a Sunday Times columnist, we've had him in the studio many times, one of the most sort of lovely, polite, thoughtful, interesting. Yeah. He's not, not party political, he's very nuanced in his thinking. And he went along and he asked people, like, really friendly, just, can I just ask you, your views on this or that? And, and people were so aggressive to him. And he said, basically, apart from two people, he spoke to like 24 people, and apart from two people who were very polite, friendly and engaged with him, he was basically sort of, shouted at and told to go away. And I mean, these people, we need to be saved from these people, and these people need to be saved from themselves. What's the answer? Is the answer banning these marches? Because as a general rule, I went on anti-lockdown march. I want on the march against anti-Semitism. People should be allowed to march, but is there an argument that these have gone on too long? That they, you've used up your quota.
Yes.
That they are intimidating, that these people... I mean, are these people... should they be considered to be lawbreakers?
Oh, you see, this is where it's really difficult, because if you'd asked me this last Thursday afternoon, I would have said ban them all, never have another one.
But we shouldn't have knee-jerk legislation.
No, we shouldn't, because that's very bad legislation. But I worry that by allowing the government to suggest that they can use all the powers that they have, and they could have stopped these marches over the weekend. They absolutely had the powers. I mean,
you used to work in the Home Office. Yeah. The idea they don't have the power is nonsense. They have banned marches before.
Yeah, they do. But I think that we need to start holding the protest organisers to account, including putting them in prison if there are severe breaches of the law.
A lot of them have strong links with Hamas.
Yeah,
it's a small point worth making.
Prescribed
terrorist group.
Yeah, so that's a
if you're going to go and have an I Support Palestine Action T-shirt, you know the drill. You want to do that, that's fine, but you're going to get arrested.
But yeah, enjoy your time in Charing Cross Police Station. But I do worry that if we allow the government to go too far, that any protest that they don't like is going to be banned, and we'll all end up
intimidating a minority community. Oh, well, in that case, women can't protest against trans. Yeah. And that's a difficult decision. But the key thing is here, we see law breaking again and again and again at these protests, and the police don't step in because they fear disorder. When it's a so-called far-right march, when it's, Tommy Robinson and is not, they're there with the riot gear, they're ready to step in. Yeah. So if you if it's a peaceful march, but the police fear stepping in when people are blatantly breaking the law with clear anti-Semitic signs and chants, then it's not a peaceful march.
No,
I mean, if someone, Gideon Falter, if he could be told you need to leave because you're being openly Jewish. If being openly Jewish is a provocation, for instance, if I went along one of his marches and I wore my Israeli flag, and if I had a banner up saying, free Palestinians from Hamas, if someone thought that was provocative to the extent that that would cause disorder, that's not a peaceful march.
No, but these people know full well what constitutes a peaceful march, and they know full well that calling for the globalise the Intifada and from the river to the sea, they know that that is inciting people. They know full well, they've been told time after time over the last 2 years that that is wrong, do your homework, be better than this, and they're not. And when you ask them what they're protesting for, which is why I thought Matthew Syed's piece was really, really good, they cannot explain. So if you can't explain what it is you're actually there for, and what it is you're protesting for or against, then you shouldn't be there. I think that we need to have an IQ test for people on protest.
Well, just a simple knowledge test. You can go through, but you need to, I'll start that about climate change stuff as well. What do you make of Gary Neville, Sky Sports, but he's done a video. There's these people walking along doing videos. I mean, seriously. There's call for a boycott of Sky Sports. Gary Neville's paid $1 million a year. But he made let's face it, a racist outburst, basically, talking about you know, what's happened, and then talking about the Union flags and the England flags everywhere, and how this was just stirring up division, and then he basically, it's angry middle-aged white men who are creating division. I mean, seriously, mate, if you think that's, some of the people doing those flags absolutely are stirring up. Of course, the vast majority of people not. Here's the thing: have we got into a situation in our country where our flags, our national flags, are divisive? If you think that the England flag or the Union flag is divisive, you're the problem, not the person who's put the flag up, and they're making a point. Now, Gary Neville, unlike Gary Lineker when he was on the BBC payroll and I had to pay his wages, whether I watched BBC or not, Gary Neville has got the right to say anything he darn well pleases. Yeah. It's just, it seems really clear to me that Gary Neville should stick to football, about which he knows an awful lot, and like many of these celebs and footballers, doesn't really know what he's talking about when it comes to a lot of these other political issues. But if he had said, division is being created by angry middle-aged black men or angry middle-aged Muslim men, you know he'd be off air today, right? Yeah. What's the difference? Well, what's the difference? Oh, and by the way, if it was written up by the BBC or any of the newspapers, white, by the way, never capitalised, black, capitalised. Because for some reason, black gets capital letter, but white doesn't. Just saying. I don't know when that rule started, but it started. I'm just saying, you can't. No, you can't. But you just can't. When I saw, the rules have got to be the same for everyone. They do. But when I saw it and he was going on about angry middle-aged white men, and I just thought, says the angry middle-aged white man holding a phone in front of his face. I mean, literally. What are you doing? I don't care, Gary. I mean, a lot of us are in denial about being middle-aged, by the way. Well, I'm just saying, I'm in denial. Heavily one-faced. But then I'm not walking down the street with. I'm an angry middle-aged white woman. But I'm angry about the right things. Well, obviously. I mean, I'm there with you. I'm very angry about stuff. But do I care what he thinks? No. It's nice to know where he stands. I want freedom of speech. Oh, no, he's right. He's free to say it. I've got no issue. I don't want him sacked. But I'm just saying. Why are the rules different? Why are the rules different? It's as simple as that. And again, I just say, you know, if you think that people putting up your national flag is divisive, this country's got way more problems than flags. Should we let other people have their say? There's a full board, of course. I'm not surprised by that. So much to talk about today. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have it yours, so particularly related to these protests. Should they be banned? Is that a dangerous sort of slippery slope? But shouldn't we just police these protests the right way, i.e. arresting the people who are breaking the law? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do get in touch. This is Talk.
as a local resident, somebody who was born and bred here. I shouldn't have said that.
You see why this is people sometimes think that Reform are very much against having people
That just
here.
came out.
I found it hard to believe it wasn't a comedy sketch. Certain people in our society sprinkle words such as far right and fascist and racist around now so liberally that it makes many people walk on eggshells, even in this case, a reform councillor who you would think would know better.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:28 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pistol still here, and let's get straight to the calls. Alan is on the line in Salford. Alan, what do you want to say? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia. Well, I'm boiling. After this attack in Manchester, I'm from Salford, which is, not far away.
Yeah.
And marches, banning marches. You should not ban marches, but when you have marches on every occasion where there's arrests of 800 and odd at one time, 400 and odd, and numerous, 300 last time, I'm afraid it's ridiculous. And the way they treat this lot, they actually got 4 coppers picking them up and taking them to the vans and putting them down nicely.
Yeah.
My God, I remember the miners' strike in '73. The police was in like wildfire. No messing about.
And very different if it's a right-wing march.
I thought it was overdone in the miners' strike, but I'm afraid I'd like to see it here.
So the thing is, that's the thing. So you're saying, like, okay, don't ban I think you're as uncomfortable as I am about banning the marches, and I for a year plus defended them, but they're so blatantly, if they're organised and again and again and again, there are anti-Semitic behaviour.
They're asking for death to other people.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing, and it's wrong. It's totally
That's not
wrong.
a peaceful protest. That's the thing. It's just that simple, isn't it? No other group would be allowed to do that.
No, but I went on my first march, right, on the 13th of September. Now, I'm 72.
Yeah.
Now, I only went because my daughter was going to go on her own to London. And I thought, well, I'm not having that.
The United Kingdom march?
Yeah, the Freedom of Speech march. So United Kingdom march.
Yeah.
And I wasn't bothered about Tommy Robinson being there, but because I didn't even see him, there was that many there. To be honest, there was the fake news about that march. There was at least 1 million people there. And I've been to many Wembleys and many times at Old Trafford where 73,000 people are coming out. And we could get nowhere near the bloody place.
Yeah.
So, and there was only I think it was 25 arrested then.
Yeah, exactly.
And only 8 of them out of the march, of the march of the march I was in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the giveaway, isn't it? No other march with this many arrests. And they're not the Palestine Action people. They're just often they're librarians and, retired vicars who are sitting down wearing their Palestine Action T-shirts being martyrs, who then get all upset when they do actually get charged. It's like, you knew the score, lady. You can support Palestine without supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation. It's really, really easy.
Yeah, but these white middle-class idiots that stand there, you see them now, some of the grannies and all the rest of them. Yeah. They've not got a clue. I think really, it is. Some of these white middle classes, they haven't got friends and they need somewhere to go.
I swear to you, they are a different breed. They really are, Alan. I appreciate that, and I can feel the frustration in your voice as well. I have to say thank you for that call. Nikki's on the line in Borden. Nikki, what do you want to say?
Hi, thank you, Julia. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for your honesty last week in terms of your genuine sympathy to the victims and all those affected by the murders on 2nd of October.
Shouldn't everyone feel that way? I mean,
they should, but also your justified anger toward our present government, who only care about their political careers. Can I just have a quick rant before you say? So I feel that this government's latest announcement to give police the authority to decide which process protests will be allowed. It's all about crushing opposition to their own beliefs, which you've already mentioned. It's about the freedom of speech yet again. Yeah. And I'm really angry that they're using last week to justify this. Yeah. I think it's appalling and disgusting. I feel like what is happening now, it's almost like how the Nazis rose in World War II. I know it sounds bizarre, but this is how I'm feeling. Instead, today we have the far left and fanatical Islamists. Now they have the power. They are consolidating their dictatorship by systematically crushing all opposition, two-tier policing, two-tier justice, different rules to different groups who are allowed to have freedom of speech. This government has created fear. It's all about divide and conquer. Never a more true quote that I saw the other day, that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Exactly. We need to stand up to this lot and have the courage to challenge this treacherous and cowardly government. And that's how I feel. And I'm really frank for this country. I love it. And I'm now ashamed. I'm ashamed of what we've become.
I couldn't agree with every word more. I mean, every single word of that, Nikki. I am genuinely, I'm furious, I'm upset, I'm angry, and I am most of all scared that there aren't enough people stepping up, because we could push back against this. We really could. We've got the power to do that. There are more of us than them. But we're not kind of marchy people, are we? Because we've all got jobs and lives and other things to do, haven't we? Rather than just getting your socialist worker placard out and your handy swastika T-shirt like they all seem to have. Nikki, thank you so much for that. More voices of sense and reality there. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk to Chris Phillips. He's former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office at the Home Office, about where we are in terms of policing of these sort of attacks and the latest on that Manchester synagogue attack. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:36 is the time. Do keep your calls coming. We're going to do our best to get to as many of them. I know so many want to have your say. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Coming up, we're going to talk to the former Security Minister, Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat, about what is going on with this Chinese spy trial and why does it matter? Why does it matter that it collapsed? That's coming up. First up, though, let's talk to Chris Phillips. He's a former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office and joins us once again. Chris, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We spoke to you, of course, on Thursday while while, we've seen the immediate aftermath of this terror attack. Can you tell us there's an awful lot of information that's come out about the killer, Jihad al-Shami. I mean, least of all, his name, which is a bit of a concern. Tell us everything we now know about this man.
Yeah, well, this man does not appear to have been on the terror watch list, which on its own is a bigger concern than anything, actually. It just goes to show how many people we've got to be concerned about in the UK, that he wasn't considered one of the terrorist watch list. But certainly he was a man who lived very close to the location of his attack. And also concerning is that he was arrested quite recently for rape and is currently on bail.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. That's a good result for mankind, I think. The simple fact is this is a man who clearly harbored a lot of hysterical worry about the West, and decided to go out and do something very similar, actually, to the attacker on Westminster Bridge back in 2017, where he didn't show up on the government's watch list, but actually was very, very dangerous.
They often don't. I mean, all we have people who do, they've been on the list, and they're basically, the security sources have said, look, we've got a load of other people who are even more of a risk, so we're not going to be too bothered about this. But I mean, Syrian-born, came with his parents at a young age, British nationality, but he followed a hate preacher who'd called Jews animals. He out on bail for rape. He'd also made direct threats by email identifying himself to his local MP over his support for Israel. And he was reported to police. The MP got more security. But the police never even interviewed him. So someone identifies themselves, lives nearby, makes a direct death threat to the police about to an MP, and the police don't even think it's worth interviewing them. But my God, if I wrote a tweet misgendering somebody, the police would turn up at my door, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Unfortunate.
Well, it's worse than that. But the point is, I don't know how much information was relayed to the police and how much.
The MP reported it to the police because he had his security stepped up.
We just don't know exactly what's gone through, and that will come out in the clearness of time, I think.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. We've got to take these people seriously. We've got to take people that issue threats very seriously. And of course, none of us want to police the social media and stuff, but people like this do need to be stopped.
Yeah, and also, again, he was like a cannabis-smoking university dropout. He was controlling and coercive in relationship. Again, police wouldn't know those bits. But, I mean, he literally ticks every box for someone who was likely to possibly be a risk, and his behaviour suggests he was a risk. Now, we've got a lot more detail also about the actual attack itself that's emerged over the weekend. And initially, obviously, we had two people, when I was on air on Thursday, two people who had died, and we had three people who were injured. And then it later emerged that one of the people who died had been stabbed by Jihad al-Shami, and the other was behind the door of the synagogue, desperately among the men trying to hold it closed heroically, who then appears to have been shot by the police when they fired at the terrorist. An absolute tragedy, and another person in hospital also has gunshot wound. Now, the Greater Manchester Police referred themselves, for investigation. But I mean, look, you've carried a weapon. You understand these things. I mean, my heart goes out to those who've died or been injured. My heart goes out to the families of those heroic men who fought off this attacker. But also, my heart goes out to the police officer who fired those shots.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I've seen the photo of the terrorist standing in front of the doors, and it was pointed out to me. You don't even necessarily see. You imagine the focus. You're focusing on that terrorist with the knife. Yeah. You don't see the men's faces in the windows. No. And
but also, you've already got a security guard in a pool of blood on the floor beside you.
Yeah, and they had to deal with it very quickly. They've got split seconds to react. They fired their gun, and clearly at least two of the bullets didn't hit their target. They went past. And this is one of the dangers of firearms that is untold, really, is that you see, in the movies, you see all these people firing guns, but you don't see the bullets landing. And
But is it right that
it's got to hit something?
Yeah, well, also there's some thought that it may have gone through the first bullet, not killing al-Shami, but it may have gone through him and hit somebody else. But I understand that the counter-terror police are now using sort of some more high-velocity bullets that are more likely to kill a terrorist, but they also pose an extra risk to passers-by and to innocents. So, there's a trade-off, isn't there? I mean, that's your thing. If he had managed to push open that door, and if those men weren't behind that door, he would have been able to do that. He could have killed far more, and the police could have killed more in a shootout, in the synagogue. So the awful truth is they did the right thing.
You're right. Interestingly, we always used to use bullets that would stop in the person. But of course, if you're wearing a bulletproof vest, or as he was wearing something that looked like he was going to explode, they have to kill him immediately, and they need a bullet that's going to take him out. But the payoff for that is if that bullet goes through him or goes through a door, there are going to be people behind that door. And the amazing thing really is that there's been no outcry from the Jewish community about these poor people that were shot by police officers. They knew the situation. That's not something we have with other communities when accidental shots are discharged.
No, indeed. And where are you when it comes to these marches being there's this move to give police the powers to curb these marches, or particularly repeat marches? We know under the Public Order Act the police already do have power. We know that in a 7-year period they actually banned 13 marches, 10 of which I think were English Defence League, so-called far right marches. So we know they've got the power to do that if they believe there is going to be violence. They're like, now we've got these pro-Palestinian marches, we're told, but given the scale of arrests we're seeing, given the outrageous anti-Semitism, given the intimidation that people feel, I mean, is it now time to say this isn't about freedom of speech anymore? This is about deliberately intimidating a minority community in this country, and it needs to stop.
Yeah, well, we do need to prevent ridiculous marches going on time and time again. Unfortunately, in this country, we have got to rent a crowd. We've known it for years. Some people will turn up to any crowd in order to cause problems. And we see that time and time again. And what we have now is a group of people that they've got lots of time on their hands that want to take up police time and our time, and are within this committing offences and getting arrested. So we need to do something about it. We cannot allow this type of criminality on our streets.
What do you make of there's almost like a competition at the moment between, the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister and then the Conservatives and Reform in terms of what we'll do in terms of deporting people who are illegally, or deporting people who, and Kemi Badenoch was saying at the start of the Tory Party conference, deporting people who display blatant anti-Semitism and the like. Do we, is that where we need to go?
There are far too many people, and this man was an unknown. I know what you said about the threatening of the MP, but he wasn't on the terrorist watch list. How many more people do we have of his ilk in this country? We just
thousands, tens of thousands. We know that. We know we've got tens of thousands of these people.
We've got to do something about this. And what amazes me, as a right-leaning person, is that the Conservatives didn't deal with this 10, 15 years ago when it was brewing up, and all the politicians have been scared out of their life to deal with a problem that everyone in the country can see formulating.
Absolutely.
And we will have more of these types of incidents.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
until something is done about it.
Absolutely. Chris Phillips, former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, thank you very much, Dee, for that. Just to give you some breaking news, rather sad news. The best-selling novelist, Queen of the Bonkbuster, Dame Jilly Cooper, has died, aged 88. Rather great character, incredibly successful novelist, a wonderful character, I always thought. Very, very successful novelist, very much loved. I think one of those sort of national treasures, really, isn't she? Claire Pissell. I've only read a couple of her novels, just in the sort of, the ones that sort of left in your, in your hotel room, and you think, oh, come on, this would be a bit of fun. But,
I've read all of them.
Have you? It's because the horsey thing.
Obviously.
Claire likes the horses.
Obviously. She is just the queen of that kind of countryside book. Just brilliant. How very, very sad. Patricia Routledge, now Jilly Cooper. It's all sort of female heroines that have left us.
There's a sort of generation, isn't there, of some of the people we do. I suppose this is what happens when you're in your middle age, like we're denying we are.
Growing up
is
with
that you start, the people who you kind of grow up with, you start suddenly losing. But tributes are flooding in for Dame Jilly Cooper, DBE. She died on Sunday morning after a fall at the age of 88. A statement said it's with great sadness we announced the death of Dame Jilly Cooper. Just some other quick breaking news, just in terms of what's been said at the Tory Party conference. Sir Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, has promised £23 billion in welfare savings, big welfare cuts. I mean, bearing in mind, Labour couldn't even get through £5 billion. But also, this is interesting, Tories pledged to end business rates for pubs and shops, just to end them completely on our high streets, basically to make sure they can keep on going. That'll be a very popular move. We'll talk about that coming up as well. Up next, going to talk to Tory MP Tom Tugendhat. In particular, I'm sure we'll get to mention that, but also this Chinese spying trial and why it's collapsed. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
This is not, in no way, this is about people of the UK having a problem with Jewish people. That has gone, it is a perfect example of an integrated community.
Yeah.
Exactly, as much as we joked about that before. This is different. The anti-Semitism coming from elsewhere, isn't it? It is coming from people who may have a religious, fundamentally based on a religious belief, taken to the extreme, that has a problem with Jewish people. And it's on these shores. It's in our country, isn't it? That's what we learn. That's what the Canary is telling us.
As a local resident, somebody who was born and bred here, I shouldn't have said that.
You see why this is people sometimes think that reform are very much against having people
that
here.
Came out.
I found it hard to believe it wasn't a comedy sketch. Certain people in our society sprinkle words such as far right and fascist
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Claire Pearsall still with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, just waiting to talk to the former Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat. Tom, get on your Zoom call, mate. You're late. Right now, though, let's just talk about what has been going on at Tory Party conference, where you are not. I'm just joyful, always not to be at any party conference. You can have a good time if you drink enough, frankly, but it's a very long, tedious one. The big speech today is Sir Mel Stride, the Conservative Shadow Chancellor. He is pledged to end business rates for pubs and shops. Now, that will have gone down an absolute storm. We know that hospitality hospitality and shops really struggling, competing with people, drinking and eating at home because they started doing lockdown, but also people, buying, going, looking at the shops, going lovely, and then going off and buying it on Amazon.
Yes.
And so that is a massive boost to the high street if that's the case.
Absolutely. We need to be looking after our small businesses and the hospitality industry, which we all rely on. And especially when you're looking at people getting into their first job, where do they normally start? In the hospitality sector, or a Saturday job in a shop. That's why we need these people. That's why we need to treat businesses a hell of a lot better, because the benefit it has to a community is enormous.
But also, I mean, we were talking to a guest last week, Sasha Lord, who used to be nighttime economy czar, effectively for Manchester. I mean, it's something like a fifth of jobs in this country are in this sector. Yeah. This is a huge part of our tourism industry as well. People want to come, they're going to go to the pub, good restaurants. This is a really big part of life. Also announced promising £23 billion in welfare savings. Now, this is way more than the pitiful £5 billion that Labour tried and didn't even manage to do.
Yeah, I mean...
Will they do it then?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen. Now, bear in mind that I like Mel Stride. I think he's incredibly sensible. But he was also Work and Pension Secretary.
Only briefly at the end.
But even so, he's been in government for a long time. So why haven't the Conservative Party tackled this previously? And they've been looking at welfare reform and backing away from it. The Labour government are doing exactly the same, and it isn't going to get any better. I applaud him if he can get this through.
Oh yeah, that would be great. I mean, there was an element you've got to remember, particularly under Ian Duncan Smith, who's a friend of the show. Yeah. During the years that he was, Work and Pension Secretary, they massively cut the benefits bill. They massively took the number of people, the workless families. Talking about universal credit, massively derided by Labour at the time. Didn't do anything to change it when they came into office. Perfectly happy, and they never pledged to in any of the elections. So there were big changes. Things were massively improving. I mean, not fast enough, not hard enough, but. Things were improving, and then we had lockdown, and basically let's just put everyone, and not check anyone's, and then suddenly everyone's got anxiety and depression. Got anxiety this morning? Yeah, don't want to go to work? Brilliant, we'll just pay you for life not to work. I mean, properly mad stuff. He's also insisted that foreign nationals shouldn't be able to claim benefits. First question from the Radio 4 Today programme, well, what about someone who is already on benefits if they're not a national? What are they supposed to do? Are they going to end up in a homeless shelter? What I love is, there was talk about, they could go back home. Well, here's the thing. This is going to blow your tiny little mind, mate. They could get a job. Why did no one think of that before? They could get a sodding job like everyone else. The idea you could go to another country and just go and live there and just don't think I'll work. Get a job. If you can't get a job, sod off. I don't know why people think this is remotely controversial. How did we get to a state where we had, 1 million people claiming benefits who aren't even British nationals?
But I like it that that's the first thing that they ask. Not, how are you going to do it? What safeguards are going to be in place? It's like, well, what about sort of foreign people? What aboutery? And you're just like, no.
Or work more hours. Can't afford to look after your kids and pay your rent. Work more hours. That's what everyone else does. That's what everyone else does.
Yes, it is.
What do you make also? They say they're going to cut back. One of the ways they're going to make savings is cut back civil servant numbers back to 2016 level. We've had a third increase in civil service level. Now it's gone up massively since, we've been going as well. But good luck with that. I mean, lots of them ain't getting anything done. So I'd be more than happy with that.
I mean, it sounds very nice, but they will have an enormous job. Whoever takes on the task of slimming down the civil service will have an enormous job because of the unionisation of it.
Yeah, whoever is in government next time round, we are going to be talking. You ain't getting in unless you are talking about Brazil levels type.
Yes.
I mean, we need proper full on. This whole tinkering thing ain't going to fly anymore. It's just not going to fly. Look, Tom Tugendhat apparently is ironically for a former security minister stuck in security. I know. So he's going to be coming on in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes time. So right now, why don't we go to another call? Because there's so many calls on the board. I've been asking you in particular about police getting powers to ban repeat protests after those pro-Palestine rallies. They're not. They're anti-Jew rallies. They went ahead despite the Manchester synagogue terror attack. Just because you're allowed to do something, I'm allowed, for instance, to go and burn a Quran outside a mosque. That actually is legal in this country. A, don't want to spend the rest of my life in hiding. B, I don't believe in burning any books, and C, I would never go and burn the book, a religious text that was important to anybody, because you know what, I wasn't brought up that way. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you need to exercise that right every minute of every day, or certainly not every fortnight, as they've been doing for 2 years. Should those protests be banned? Tell us why they should, tell us why they shouldn't. Paul is on the line in Portsmouth. Paul, what do you reckon?
Hello, Julia. Hello, Claire. Yeah, well, just like your good self, Julia, I joined you on that protest when we marched through London in support of the Jewish community. Yeah. And, I thought it was quite a big rally. My thoughts are, could you imagine if that was in, week out, we did this, Julia? Week in, week out, we did this. Would you imagine how quick that decision would be to ban those marches?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think they would, because, of course, I've heard of people this morning on radio say, of course, there's always some trouble at marches. Not on that march, there wasn't. There was no trouble. There's never any march at any of those events. By the way, I couldn't go to the last one. I was very, very touched. I was asked to speak at the last march against anti-Semitism, but I did have a very good excuse. I was in Israel, which I thought was a good excuse, but not to go. But I don't think they would ban them. But there are powers already. The Home Office has 2 banned marches where they believe there's going to be public order problems.
Yeah, I agree, and I just feel I a little bit, feeling that if it was that the shoe was on the other foot, I'm sorry, Julia, I just think there would be more discussions. I think if it was at the level of what we're seeing now, I do think the decision would be quicker to even limit the marches or stop the marches if it was the other way around to what it is.
Do you worry that it's a slippery slope, and if marches are banned, bearing in mind they were happy to ban marches in 2020, except it was Black Lives Matter, they were definitely allowed to go ahead, and police took the knee rather than actually arrest people breaking the laws at the time. But do you worry that there's a slippery slope, and what about the next cause that gets a march banned?
There's always a slippery slope, Julia. There's always a slippery slope when the government are asking for more powers. We always know it will not just stop at stopping a Pacific march. It will move to something else, and it will stop something else.
They could just try arresting the people who are breaking the law, couldn't they? I mean, there is an element where if you have a march and repeatedly people are breaking the law on that march, in most scenarios, most of those organisers, like the EDL, had 10 marches banned over a 7-year period. So they've got the powers to do it. If they believe there's going to be widespread law breaking, and there has been previously, that it'd be easy for them to organise these marches and not have law breaking, because you just have to. It's really easy to not hold up a swastika when you're talking about Israel. It's really easy.
I agree. It's easy to pull up any banner with certain language written on it. It seems to be.
I manage it every day. I mean, isn't it funny how they can't manage it? I mean, it's really easy not to get arrested for supporting Palestine Action, just by not saying I support Palestine Action. But they managed not to do it. Paul, thank you for that. Again, I'm with you. It is that difficulty, isn't it? There's so much more to come, loads more calls to get through. Just honestly, every single one of your calls are just utterly brilliant. Cannot wait to get as many on air as possible. 0344 499 1000 is the number. You can text as well, 87222. Send a message on X as well to @talkTV. More from me, more from Claire Pearsall, lots more top guests, including we are going to talk to the former security minister, Tom Tugendhat. Also going to talk to brilliant Natasha Hausdorff, and many more top guests besides this. Is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for getting in touch and watching us and getting in touch. Lots of you getting in touch on the phone lines, in particular over, what a surprise, police to get new powers to curb repeat protests. This comes after those pro-Palestinian activists ignored police not to stage demo on Saturday. I mean, they did one on Friday, loads on Friday and on Saturday. There've been numerous demonstrations, protests in train stations, on the streets, Whitehall, Manchester, you name it. Anti-Semitic slogans, anti-Semitic placards and banners, anti-Semitic chants, which river, which sea. Yeah, you want the destruction of Israel, be honest about it. But police don't go in and arrest those people, do they? Unless they're wearing a I Support Palestine Action T-shirt, and it's nice and straightforward. But do they have the powers already to do that? In which case, do we need more powers? Are you worried this is a slippery slope in terms of police being able to ban these protests? Or should they have been banned long ago? Because the level of criminality is off the scale. And just because there aren't riots, it's only because the police don't go in because they fear there will be riots. But why is one group allowed to walk on our streets, intimidating a minority community every single time they feel like it, every other fortnight in London, making central London a no-go zone for Jews in this country, for goodness sake? And they're able to do it with impunity because the police are too scared to get involved. That's not how things should work. I want to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. Meanwhile, it has been revealed that the Manchester synagogue terror attacker Jihad al-Shami was a follower of an extremist hate preacher who described Jews as animals. He was also out on bail for rape. His father had celebrated the October 7th attack and called his son Jihad, which may perhaps have been a clue we should have looked at. Plus, President Donald Trump has warned that Hamas will face a major obliteration. Is there a minor obliteration? I don't know if that is the case. If it refuses to give up control of Gaza during those ceasefire talks with Israel. They're taking place as of today in Egypt. Meanwhile, the Tories have demanded the PM comes clean over the collapse of the China spy case. This comes after it emerged that Jonathan Powell, one of the Prime Minister's closest aides, told a Whitehall meeting the government could not call China an enemy in court, which meant that, well, spying for them wasn't a crime. But they would have known that the trial would collapse at that point. And why don't they think China is the enemy? Well, we'll talk about all of that and plenty more besides, including what's been going on at Tory Party conference. And joining me for all the chat is Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor. Good morning to you once again.
Good morning.
I've had my rant. I could do it every 5 minutes, frankly, about this Jihad al-Shami and the abject failures that once again have led to another killer on our streets, another terror attack. And here we are again. Do you think that it was appropriate for Palestine Action, well, there was some Palestine Action, but the pro-Palestinian marchers, do you think it was appropriate for them to go ahead with protests in train stations? Well, they say protests. I don't think the word protesting. I think they were celebrating both October the 7th, which the anniversary is, second anniversary is tomorrow, but also the attack on the synagogue and 2 Jews being dead at the end of that result of that, and 3 in hospital. I think it was a celebration of killing Jews. I think we should call it what it is and stop calling it pro-Palestinian. It's anti-Jew. It's anti-Semitic. And then they went ahead on Saturday. Please, from the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary and the Metropolitan Police Chief, please don't go ahead with your march because it's so insensitive and will cause distress. Oh, please. Oh, pretty please. They had the powers to ban those marches. They've already got them. Marches have been banned before. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood says that she wants to give the police more powers to ban, particularly repeat marches that intimidate people. What do you make of that?
The protest gatherings, call them what you will, hate gatherings, should not have gone ahead. Absolutely shouldn't have gone ahead. To have the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary saying we would really prefer it if you didn't isn't cutting it. You need to go to the organisers and say, do not do this, otherwise we're going to have you arrested. That's what I would do, but then I'm a little bit more hardline than I think most of the Labour government are. To see them at a train station singing, dancing, flags, swastikas,
just with impunity.
What is the matter with these
But
people?
also, did you see the footage? One guy who, absolute soldier, really, walks through and says, "Free the hostages," got booed.
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't want this war to be over, do they?
No. And this is the thing. Did you hear... I've watched a lot of the footage of people at these places and listened to reports and things. Not one chant of, calling on Hamas or one placard calling on Hamas to accept the peace deal. Right now in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh,
yes,
there are peace talks right now taking place, not in the same room. Would you want to be in the same room as the people who'd massacred your people? No, the Israelis and Hamas discussing this peace deal. This 20-point plan from Donald Trump. Israel have accepted it.
Yep.
Hamas has said yes, but. And it was a brilliant piece, Substack, written by Andrew Fox, a regular on the show, and analysing it. And CNN, they've said yes. And of course, it will go around, well, Hamas said yes, but Israel is still bombing Gaza. No, but they haven't agreed to the... They've agreed to the bits they'd like. Oh, OK, we'll do that prisoner swap. So we'll get some of our mass-murdering terrorists who are convicted of crimes against Israel, in literally blowing up bombs on buses, school buses and in cafes. You want those people... The fact that they want those people back is a bit of a giveaway, right? And in return for which we're going to free the 20, hopefully, fingers crossed, still alive hostages held in tunnels for the last 2 years, within 72 hours of a deal being done. But when it comes to... And Hamas have to lay down their weapons and they can't be involved in any future running of Gaza. Got a few buts there. They haven't agreed to the deal.
No, they haven't. And this is what amazes me, that people don't read the actual news about what is going on. They don't read what Donald Trump has put out there. This is his 20-point plan. They don't see what Israel has done because they don't care.
They've bloody well got an opinion on it, haven't they?
They do, but they're coming from the basis of they're just believing whichever organisation, whereas it's the Hamas Health Ministry or whichever propaganda arm.
But they don't even believe that. Hamas has said it's like, was it 65,000 people have died? I mean, about 25 of those are the jihadist Hamas fighters. Yes. Pretty damn pleased. I'd celebrate with champagne every night, knowing every one of those was dead. Others actually there's about 5,000 which have died naturally, and they think quite a few thousand who've been killed by Hamas themselves. But now they're doing that. Not only do people accept this, apparently they're all children. You never see a Hamas fighter. No, none of them have died, weirdly. Yeah. But even on their own figures, you have to accept the fact, even on their own figures, more combatants have died, than Muslims. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. I think it's 1.5 to 1, which is the lowest ratio in any war ever, given they're being used as human shields. But also, crucially, people are now showing this 680,000 figure.
Yes.
It's 680,000. Yeah. I mean, basically, like a third of the Gazan population has been wiped out.
But it's just sort of pick a number, any number. And then
why not claim 5 million people have died in Gaza? Population 2.5 million, 5 million have died.
But you imagine...
Go on, just say it. Just make a claim. And 6 million of them are babies. And I'm not making light of innocent civilians dying, but... They're just taking the mick at this point.
Well, they don't do their cause any favours, because you start looking at it and questioning absolutely everything that they're saying.
No, you do, and I do, and our sensible listeners and viewers do. But if you only see the Guardian and or the BBC, most people get their news from the BBC. If you see BBC, Sky, or ITV, you haven't got a clue about any of the facts. You literally haven't been given a fact. Yeah. They do whole half-an-hour reports without mentioning Hamas on Gaza.
But they rely also on social media, but they only follow the accounts that...
Stop getting news from TikTok or Instagram. For the love of God, that is not a news source. Mind you, neither is the BBC anymore. So, I mean, swings around.
I was going to say maybe it's better getting it from TikTok than the BBC.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the key thing is, we're talking about, these marches. I'm less concerned about marches than I am about the people who are inspired by these marches and by the lies on the BBC and Sky and ITV and elsewhere, which say that all these children are dying, and then a man whose father called him Jihad al-Shami basically rams his car into a synagogue and kills people and tries to get in to kill people for the children. He was shouting for the babies, for the children, because he believes the lies that are told by people at the BBC. They have blood on their hands. The cries of genocide from the likes of, David Lammy and, the Deputy Prime Minister. These lies, these absolutely unverified, completely provably untrue lies, are why people do get radicalised like this and then go on these killing sprees. It is a miracle that only 2 people died, and sadly one of those shot by the police shooting at the killer, and they were behind the door. The police weren't to know that. I mean, but it is simply a matter. It's a miracle that we didn't see. Women and children and slaughtered. I mean, thank God for those heroic men at the synagogue holding that door closed.
And the rabbi, the rabbi that got everybody back from the door, protected the door,
absolutely,
and kept calm. When you read the sort of eyewitness accounts to say how calm he was, and afterwards, through all of this horrific incident, he then went round to make sure that everybody was okay.
Yeah.
He went round just to ensure that people were safe and they felt loved. I almost cried when I read that, because I just thought, I cannot imagine being in that situation and then being so level-headed afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a leader amongst men. I mean, really is, and it's just. But the Jewish community just so absolutely, just terrified for and being told. We were saying earlier, being told not to congregate, and the police begging and pleading, and the Home Secretary with these marchers. Please stop doing this because we have to police the marches. What with you all being anti-Semites and all, and so we can't provide security, but. We shouldn't be needing to provide security. It's like, what can you... I put out a tweet last week, what can we do? Can't just tweet. What can we do to help the Jewish community in this country? And people were saying, give it, donations to the, the Community Safety Trust, provide guards, go and guard them yourself, do this, that. You know what? That's not good enough.
No.
If a particular, I know that mosques also have security, but I know there's been a terror attack and an attempt, a firebombing of the mosque, and that is awful and appalling as well. But thankfully, nobody died. But you're talking about some lone nutters, okay? I mean, and we've seen they are, we have the Finsbury Park Mosque and these people, lone, deranged nutters. The reality is, though, the biggest threat in this country is Islamist extremism by a long way. The vast majority of the people who have died in this country of terror attacks have died as a result of an Islamist extremist. The vast majority of terror attacks are Islamist extremists. The vast majority of the people on the terrorist watch list are Islamist extremists. So let's focus our attention on the biggest threat. And here's the other key thing. When we found out this guy, Jihad al-Shami, named by his father, Syrian-born, his father and his mother brought him to this country after naming him Jihad. Should we have let him in? I'm wondering this. He was then given British citizenship. His father had called the October 7th attackers heroic in a public tweet. Not even embarrassed about it. It wasn't even, they were all whispering it to each other, absolutely blatantly, openly celebrating one of the most horrific massacres, the worst since the Holocaust, of Jewish people. And here's the thing. We've imported this problem. We've got our homegrown Phoebes and Tristans who have every it was the NHS flag, it's the trans flag, and now it's the Palestinian flag, and the world because of Greta and saving the world. They go with every single right on cause, whether it's swampy or they do them all, and they are believing this madness, and they are on those marches and they legitimise it, and they write about it in the Guardian, and they call people like me and you far right because we don't think it's a good idea for people to put swastikas on the Israeli flags. We're not sure that sends the right message. But the reality is this problem is something we've imported. We've imported it from countries where anti-Semitism is the norm. And if you've ever been to the Middle East, you will know that anti-Semitic views are absolutely the vast majority view of people living in those countries. It's ingrained in people. It's not just in Gaza, it's ingrained, it's imbued. And what we thought was a good idea was, let's import lots of these people and see what happens. And look at what happened. Let me just run you through various of the high-profile terror attacks. It's not all of them. It's not all of the terror attacks we've had in this country, but it's most of them. 2005, seven terror attacks on the tubes and the bus. 3 of the 4 attackers born in Pakistan. 4th born. Parents born in Pakistan, born and raised here, but to Pakistani parents. The 4th was born in Jamaica. The 2007 London-Glasgow terrorists born to parents from Iraq and India. 2013, the Lee Rigby attack in Woolwich, born to parents who were Nigerian. 2015, the attack in Leytonstone, the terror attacker born in Somalia. 2017, remember the London Bridge attack? All three were born abroad. One in Pakistan, one we're not sure, a failed asylum seeker either from Morocco or Libya. It was never established, and one Moroccan Italian. The 2017 Manchester Arena attack, the terrorist, a Libyan parents brought to this country. 2019 London Bridge attack, parents were from Pakistan. 2020 the attack in Streatham, on the streets in Streatham, parents were from Sri Lanka. 2020 the attack in that Reading Park, the terrorist was born in Libya. 2021 the murder of the Tory MP Sir David Amess, the parents were from Somalia. 2021 the Liverpool terrorist attack, he was born in Iraq. And 2025 born abroad in Syria to Syrian parents and brought here. There's a pattern, folks. There's a pattern. We are importing terrorists to this country. We're importing people who have a hatred of our country, of the West, of our civilization, of Jews, but yes, also of Christians and atheists and anyone in the West. And we are importing them, and they are being radicalized, whether it's in the mosque or online or by their parents, whatever it is, we are importing the problem. I wonder what we think the solution might be to that, because I think that's the territory we're in. Because as we were saying earlier, we're done with looking back, not looking back in anger, because I've been looking back in anger since 2005. I should continue to look back in anger. I would like to look forward with hope. But we're done with lighting candles and singing Kumbaya. It's time for action. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're going to get to your calls very soon. First up, we're going to take a break. Then we're going to be talking to the former Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat. Wonder what he has to say. This is Talk.
And racist.
They've always been hate marches. They're deliberately targeting Jews, and after the Jews, us, then we're next. This is a case of they're trying to take over the country. These people should now, the marches should be banned, but unfortunately we have a Home Secretary who is a practicing Muslim herself, so she's not necessarily the most unbiased. But apart from that, these people should now be arrested. They should be courts set up overnight.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, this is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:22 is the time. Claire Pearsall's still here. We'll get her thoughts on what my next guest has to say. He is Tom Tugendhat, Conservative MP and former Security Minister. Finally got you on, Tom. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Julia, I'm sorry I was late. The security lines getting into conference were a lot longer than I expected.
As a former security minister,
fault, and I do apologise.
We will. I'm sure my audience will accept this. Look, I want to just ask you just briefly before I want to talk about the China spy case, but I want to talk to you briefly just first of all about the police getting greater powers to ban repeat protests after what we saw a huge number of different demos and protests in that big march on Saturday as well. They call themselves pro-Palestinian. I don't think that is what the march is about. What do you think of those powers? Do we need them?
Well, look, I think, frankly, we need to see the police taking the decision to stop incitement to racial hatred being actioned on our streets as under the cover of marching in favour of one cause or another. I mean, I raised this at the time. I think this is something that we've really got to look at. And I wrote, actually, funnily enough, for Jewish News on Sunday about this, saying what the police are doing is they're making a political decision. The decision they're making is that it is better to have a quiet march today and tolerate radicalisation over months and years to come. Well, I don't agree with that decision. That's a political decision. It's not a tactical one. It's not a policing decision. I don't agree with that decision, and so I don't think this is where operational independence of the policing should lie.
Well, and that's the issue, isn't it? I've just been reading out, all the list of terror attacks. It's not all of them in the last 20 years, but it's most of them. Islamist terrorists, largely either themselves born abroad, mostly though, their parents born abroad and brought here. We have a problem in this country. Now, we've got the Phoebes and Tristrams going on these marches, doing every left-wing cause, but we've also got an awful lot of people in this country who are properly radicalised, a huge number. I mean, I think it's only a quarter. Was it Henry Jackson Society found last year? Only a quarter of Muslims in this country believe that people were raped and murdered on October the 7th. Whole thing's completely made up. I mean, the evidence is blatantly obvious. Huge number of non-Muslims in this country also believe that, terrifyingly as well. We have a problem. What is the problem, and how do we deal with it?
Well, I think we've got a range of issues, actually, and one of them is that there are actually many, many Muslim families in this country who are absolutely terrified of the radicalisation that they see on the streets, because they know that it speaks directly to their kids. And they're keeping their kids safe, like you and I do, keeping them away from sort of, horrible influences on the internet or whatever. They're keeping them in nice mosques, nice churches, whatever it happens to be. They're looking after their kids properly. And suddenly, all of these sort of vile graffitis, the parachutists, the slogans, all that sort of stuff goes straight into their home through the TV set. And worse than that, it's happening in front of the police and the police do nothing. So this leads many Muslim families who spoke to me in recent years to think that, frankly, the police isn't on their side. Now, this is a problem because, frankly, if we leave the ground to the extremists, then it's the honourable, the decent, the law-abiding who get silenced and get cut out, and that's simply unacceptable. But I'm afraid there's a real problem here as well. We have seen the Muslim Brotherhood spread its wings across the United Kingdom in ways that it has not been allowed to in the United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, in Egypt, and I can keep going. Now, the problem is the Muslim Brotherhood isn't something you can prescribe. It's not an organisation. It's not like Hamas or Hezbollah.
Well, Hamas is basically a Muslim Brotherhood organisation, though, isn't it?
It is, exactly. But Muslim, if you want to think of it, the Muslim Brotherhood is like communism. Hamas is like the Communist Party of Great Britain. Do you see what I mean? It's one is an ideology, the other is an organisation. And the Muslim Brotherhood ideology is a huge problem, and it's one that we have to combat. But we have to combat it by getting the Charity Commission the powers that it properly should be using. We need to have organisations like Hamas, but actually there are many others that have a much better reputation than Hamas. I mean, that's not really very hard, is it? Yeah. But, that seem to be law-abiding who are sharing this ideology. Now, we wouldn't tolerate fascist ideology. We wouldn't tolerate that kind of hateful ideology. Frankly, we shouldn't tolerate the hammer or sickle either, but that's another matter. But, the reality is we shouldn't be tolerating extremism. We should be calling it out. And even when it's not illegal, even if it's freedom of speech, we should know who's using it, who's saying it, and we should be able to judge them accordingly, even if it's only personally.
Should the people who are not British citizens, whether they've come here with indefinite leave to remain or whatever basis, if they express any of those views, those we don't want thought crimes, but if they express those views, should we deport them? I mean, should we just say we don't want people in this country who have been radicalised, who believe that that Jews are animals and things like, as a hate preacher who apparently was followed by the Manchester synagogue killer Jihad al-Shami?
Well, you know what you remind me of, Julia? There was a story, I'm going to get the year wrong, so forgive me, but there was a story a few years ago in the French newspapers about a prefect, so sort of the leader of a French department, who was doing the sort of citizenship ceremony for new French citizens, and a veiled woman refused to shake his hand. Well, guess what he did? He refused to hand over the passport and denied her citizenship instantly. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and you would imagine that the Supreme Court in the UK might do one thing. Well, I can tell you what the Supreme Court in France did. They said that she failed on with not having Republican values, and she was not allowed to be granted citizenship, and that was that. Frankly, if you want to be part of this country, and I think it's a wonderful country, I think it's amazingly tolerant, and by the way, I happen to think it's the greatest country to be of any religion, and talk to Sajid Javid, talk to any number of different people about this. It is a fantastic country. In fact, Shabana Mahmood said it's the greatest country to be a Muslim in. So, this is a fantastic country, but you know what? You need to play your part.
Absolutely. Can I talk to you about this Chinese spy trial? I'd be grateful actually if you could explain to audience, because it's utterly bizarre. Two men charged with alleged spying in Parliament on behalf of China, and the trial has collapsed, as far as we can understand, because the government's official documents say that China isn't an enemy state. Now, you've got personal experience dealing with China. Explain to us what has actually happened and why the trial has collapsed.
So look, I've just got to be a little careful, Julia, because there's a lot of speculation around here, and quite rightly, people in our country are innocent unless proven guilty, and these two have not been proven guilty, so we have to treat them as they are. Now, they were charged under the Official Secrets Act 1911. Now, that requires you to help an enemy state, not just a foreign state, but an enemy state. Now, I didn't think that was good enough, and that's why when I was Security Minister, I introduced the new National Security Act 2023, but they weren't charged under that because they were arrested before it came into force. So, that required the government to prove that China is an enemy state. Now, I don't know what happened. All I can tell you is that when I was in office, there was no question that the government was going to give evidence saying that. Now, again, I say I don't know what happened, but the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, sent me and others a letter saying that the evidential threshold, I can't remember the exact wording of that bit, was, and I quote, no longer met. Now, if it's no longer met, it means it was met before, doesn't it? It means something has changed. Now, what has changed? I don't know. But frankly, the idea that anybody in government would balance our national security against whatever temporary benefit they think they might get out of Beijing, and let's face it, it would be very temporary anyway, is frankly extraordinary.
But this is it. There are papers that we have reported that basically they believe that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, again used to be very senior advisor to Tony Blair when he's in power. All these they bring him back. They put the old band back together, haven't they? He advised that actually under the documents that China was not an enemy state, and therefore as a result of that this fell. But the argument seems to be that they are trying to, kowtow to the Chinese. We've still got this possibility of this massive Chinese embassy, right, near the Tower of London, near the city, that could go ahead, and that basically they're desperate to be nice to the Chinese and not upset them. This looks horribly like foreign influence over our courts, to me. I'm sorry, that's what it looks like to me.
Well, it doesn't look great, does it? And now, I can't tell you whether the story about Jonathan Powell is true or not. I'm afraid I don't know. What I can say is that story in the Sunday Times read very powerfully. And the other thing that is clear is that there's a bunch of people who simply don't understand what trade is. They all think, like socialists, that trade is some sort of gift that people give you. It's absolute rubbish. People trade with you because they're going to make money. Yep. That's the only reason they do it. The idea that it's some sort of a gift is complete rubbish. You shouldn't be banging down to people for trade. You should be looking for advantage, looking for opportunity, and doing business with the right people and not with the wrong ones. It's as simple as that. Absolutely.
Can I just ask you also finally about what's been going on at Tory Party conference? We've got an opening speech from Kemi Badenoch yesterday, and a lot of people talking about pressure on her. Of course, pressure on her taken off a little bit by the pressure on Keir Starmer it is. But we've had an announcement from Sir Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, promising £23 billion in welfare savings, cutting the civil service numbers back to the 2016 levels. That would be a third cut. Also pledging to end business rates for pubs and shops, and indeed also saying foreign nationals won't be able to claim benefits. It's quite a raft of policies. A lot of people might go, oh, I agree with that, agree with that, agree with that. Why didn't you all do it when you were in power?
Well, look, Julia, I mean, we can write the history books if you like, but the truth is we've got to think about the future. The reality is we got messed up with a whole bunch of different things. You don't need me to tell you about that, Julia. You watched it too. And did we let the country down on that? Of course we did. We know that. We know that. We've got to plan for the future. And the truth is the future demands us to cut costs. Look, I mean, I wish it weren't so, Julia, but you know the truth as well as I do. We are spending like sailors on shore leave. We've now got the biggest welfare budget. We've now got the biggest national expenses that we've had in, well, ever actually, and we are racking up the debt. And the simple truth is we have now got taxes so high that our tax take is going to be falling over coming years. People are leaving to, you know, the United Arab Emirates, to Italy, to Portugal, to Australia, wherever it is. And those are the taxpayers. We are going to be in real trouble in a year or two because of the decisions that Labour has made and Rachel Reeves has made to tax us all more. And what that's going to do is leave an even bigger hole. You don't need me to tell you that. You know exactly what it is. We need to bring down the cost of spending. Tell you why. Because a country is like a family. If you spend too much, you end up in debt to outsiders.
Really good to get to speak to you. Tom Tugendhat, Conservative MP, former Security Minister, thank you for that. I'm Claire Pistol, who's a former Conservative Government Advisor and grateful not to be at party conference. Very noisy it was too.
Yes.
What do you make of what you had to say, whichever you want to come back on?
I think the China spy situation is really, really interesting, and I'm just amazed that this is still going on, that the spying in this way, it's so old school. This could
again, I have to say alleged. We know that China is spying. These two men, it's an alleged case. Yes.
It's something out of a John le Carré novel rather than sort of the cyber world that we live in. So I find that quite interesting. No longer meets the evidential threshold.
Yeah, again. Well, we're going to talk to Anthony Gleeson, who's a security intelligence expert, in the next half hour about that as well. Get to more of your calls as well. 0344 499 1000. Up next, it's Natasha Hausdorff, Legal Director at UK Lawyers for Israel. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's 11:36. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to my next guest. Natasha Hausdorff is a barrister. She's also legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia. Great to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you'll find this a nicer place to be received than when you sort of go to places like the UN and others, indeed many universities, where we just see the most outrageous slurs that you have to try and counter. And you've done a fantastic job over the last 2 years to try and counter some of the malice and the slurs. I just want to ask, first of all, your reaction to the question today we're asking our audience about police getting powers, we're told by the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, to ban repeat protests after these, they call them pro-Palestinian rallies. They're anti-Israel and anti-Jewish rallies, and they're pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas, aren't they? But they went ahead despite that Manchester synagogue terror attack, despite the pleas from the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister and the police, and they still went ahead. What do you think of those powers? Do you think those are justified?
Well, Julia, I've always been quite convinced by the well-made arguments that the police and the Home Secretary, in fact, have already existing powers that they should be making use of under the Public Order Act, under the Terrorism Act. And what we have seen over the last 2 years is a failure to properly grapple with the problem that we've been facing, and to make better use of those existing powers. And no more was this, I think, on display than a couple of days ago. I heard a very senior former police officer quibbling with politicians who were calling these repeated marches hate marches, and in fact suggesting that it was the politicians themselves that were at fault for using that term. And therein we have, I think, the real problem, which is not the existence of legislation, but the willingness to call out what we have been seeing on the streets: calls for intifada, calls for death.
What does intifada mean? Because we've been told, I mean, we've even been told that the word jihad, the name of this terrorist last Thursday, Jihad al-Shami, we're told that, you know, it's struggle. It's nothing. It's nothing provocative.
Well, we just need to look at Arab media across the Middle East and what these terms are understood to be in that context. And it's high time, I think, that we take the people who are threatening not just Israel in this respect, but the West and our values and our way of life, we take them at their word. When they are calling for intifada, this is a reference to the waves of terrorism attacks, suicide bombings against innocent Israeli civilians. And when they are seeking to globalize that is exactly, of course, what we saw in Manchester last week. That is exactly what these calls indeed...
Let's call it what it is. Globalised intifada means kill Jews anywhere. That's what it means.
And I would actually suggest that those chanting it have a desire to widen that. So it's not just Jews anymore, but all of those that do not subscribe to their particular worldview.
Well, I'm apparently a supporter of what's called the Zionist entity. I was saying the phrase Zionist entity is always one of the giveaways on social media, and proud to be so. I mean, I think they think it's an insult. I'm really not sure why they think it's an insult. Have you felt intimidated? We've seen so many people speaking so powerfully in the last few days, and frankly for the last 2 years, about how intimidated they feel by this. And when we have people marching on the streets every fortnight, we had people, let's be honest, celebrating. They were out celebrating, even on Thursday night and on Friday and on Saturday, again and again. Whitehall, in Manchester itself. The festival feel of some of these apparently very concerned protests about babies dying in Palestine, where they think still it actually exists. There was a festival feel. They were celebrating Jews being murdered, weren't they?
And I can entirely understand why the Jewish community in the UK and elsewhere around the world feels intimidated in this context. But I think it's extremely important, and thank you for your kind words in the introduction. I go, Julia, where I'm needed, and wherever the truth really needs to be told, be it at the United Nations or on university campuses or on media, when it will have me. And I think it's utterly critical that more people feel confident enough, armed with the facts, and armed with a proper understanding of the law, which is of course central to so many misrepresentations that we also hear parroted on these hate marches. So many more people need to feel empowered to speak up and not to be intimidated by this falsification of fact, but also the false sense of indignation and even sympathy that we have seen. Because if these people truly cared about Palestinian civilians, they would be holding those accountable, who are truly responsible for this continued suffering, Hamas, and they would also acknowledge that by their very actions, coming out week after week to provide support and succor to internationally prescribed terrorist organizations, that they are dragging out this conflict and they are increasing the suffering of Palestinians thereby.
And this is reality. I've never seen any of these marches ever, or any of the people making this case on social media. My God, I don't know whether any of these people have actually got jobs. They spend so much time on social media. And they seem to always manage to make their case without at any point suggesting that Hamas should release the hostages, should lay down their own weapons, stop using Palestinian people, particularly innocent babies and children, as human shields. Also, crucially, I haven't heard a single call for Hamas to sign up to this Trump peace plan. Now, we know in Egypt right now, in Sharm el-Sheikh, there must be good, I've been there many times, but I don't know, there must be good golf courses there because Steve Witkoff, the president's envoy, has been sent there, his golf buddy, and envoy for everything. But we've got in different rooms, they're not being the same as Hamas leadership and Egyptian, apologies, and Israeli leadership, and they're discussing this 20-point plan. Now, we know it was first announced by Donald Trump last week with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, and he had accepted this 20-point plan. Hamas, at the end of last week, put out a statement saying they did accept the plan. All the reports, CNN, saying yes, they accept. But it's a yes, but the but is so big, they haven't accepted the plan, have they? Tell us what they've agreed to, what they haven't agreed to, as far as we know.
The major sticking point in terms of what's been publicised is ultimately their continued control of the Gaza Strip and the demilitarisation of Gaza, the dismantling of Hamas itself. It seems in principle that they have subscribed to the release of all hostages, although it's important to note that Trump's deadline was in fact for the acceptance of this deal by 6 p.m. US time yesterday. And Hamas clearly haven't done that, despite being threatened with obliteration by Trump if they didn't sign on to, accept and agree to those terms. So unfortunately, we are seeing, as we have over the last 2 years, the goalpost shifting, the deadlines being moved back. But perhaps we can be, cautiously optimistic that this current set of circumstances has come about. Again, there's a pattern here which we would do well to learn from, through the Israeli military applying unrelenting pressure to the remaining Hamas terrorists, this time in Gaza City, despite the rhetoric of the international community seeking to encourage Hamas. And we've seen time and time again where support for Hamas and the recognition of a Palestinian state and rewards to Hamas for their bloody activities on the 7th of October, the atrocities, the genocide that they committed, that has encouraged Hamas to renew its intransigence, to back away from negotiations in the past. And on the flip side of that, we have the military pressure that Israel has been applying, which seems to have, again, brought them to the negotiating table. But it's important to stress that they are now seeking to negotiate and to push back and to delay the release of these hostages. 48 remaining hostages for 2 years tomorrow.
20 still believed to be alive. But of course, again, apparently it's been claimed they don't actually have access to, they've been taken by various other jihadist groups. Find them. But of course, by the way, these people will be released in return, innocent people taken captive 2 years ago from homes and elsewhere. And they're going to be released in return for hundreds of prisoners, some of whom are mass murdering terrorists themselves, who for some reason Hamas want back. Do you think this time we are going to get to deal? We know there's a lot of pressure on Netanyahu. We know that Donald Trump is desperate to be the peacemaker at any cost. He said he would back Netanyahu, and it's like, okay, if Hamas don't come to the table, as you said, they didn't sign up full stop onto this deal by that time yesterday, and all those deadlines kept being moved, didn't it? That actually, all hell would break loose, and Israel would have free reign. But at the end of the day, we've once again got a situation where Hamas are given credit for pretending to agree to a deal, and Israel is being attacked for continuing to attack in Gaza City. And as always, whatever the outcome, Israel will be blamed and Hamas somehow get away scot-free. That is what keeps happening. And it keeps happening not just with the idiots who get their news from TikTok and on the pro-Palestinian marches, but it's happening on Sky and ITV and, crucially, on the BBC. They accept this. They push this stuff. They push this line in their reporting with experienced, long-in-the-tooth war reporters pushing this line.
So a couple of things on that. I think the pressure that Trump is applying on Hamas this week is clearly in light of what is happening on Friday, which is the Nobel Prize Committee will be awarding the Peace Prize on the 10th of October, I think at 11 a.m. Central European time. And so this week is crunch time to have something set down on paper for the President of the United States. But you're absolutely right in terms of the role that the media has been playing here. And I include the media. I should have earlier when I spoke about politicians around the world encouraging Hamas intransigence and rewarding their terror activities. The fact that the media have served, not just over the past 2 years, many years prior to that, but the last 2 years it's really reached fever pitch, as a mouthpiece for Hamas propaganda, to the extent that journalists are pretty open about the fact that they won't report the truth for fear of not being able to continue their operations in the Middle East, that they therefore subscribe to the censorship that internationally prescribed terrorist organizations like Hamas, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, put on them, the constraints that they put on them, and that they only report within those tramlines. You know, so much for journalistic integrity, but you're absolutely right that is a key factor, not just in the continuation of this war, which, let's face it, should have ended years ago, but also in the climate that we are experiencing in this country. The spike in anti-Semitism is undeniably fueled by the information war that the media have so gladly participated in. And that is something that there has to be accountability for.
Oh, absolutely. Well, apparently I'm going to be taken to The Hague for war crimes. I'm happy to be tried, but there we are. Natasha Hausdorff, a barrister, legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. Thank you very much. Claire Pissell.
Really interesting with President Trump and his deadline. When we've seen this previously, haven't we, that when Trump issues a deadline, it does move, it gets moved. But I think that we have to be really hopeful that this comes off.
I mean, just for the sake of the hostages.
Absolutely, I mean, for the sake of the hostages and their families, this has to happen.
And then we'll see what happens. We'll take a quick break. Up next, and a talk to security intelligence expert Anthony Gleeson. This is Talk.
The marches should be banned, but unfortunately we have a Home Secretary who is a practicing Muslim herself, so she's not necessarily the most unbiased. But apart from that, these people should now be arrested. They should be caught, set up overnight.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. Let's get straight to my next guest, Professor Anthony Gleeson. He's a security and intelligence expert and is here to join us now. Good morning to you, Professor Anthony Gleeson.
Good morning, Julia.
I want to talk to you first of all about this China spy case. We ended up talking to Tom Tugendhat in the last half hour as well because we had to move his time. But this Chinese spy case, I think a lot of people are sort of, what's this all about? It's on the front page of the papers occasionally. It was a case that never came to trial. We've got two men allegedly accused of spying for China. Of course, they're not coming to trial. You're innocent until proven guilty in this country. But we understand that that this trial has collapsed, and the claim seems to be at the deliberate behest of the government. That seems to be the claim in the Sunday papers. What do you believe has actually happened? What do we know has happened?
Well, there's a legalistic way of looking at this, which is the differences in the Official Secrets Act that existed before the National Intelligence Act of 2023. Yeah. So in the Official Secrets Act, you have to be caught with intelligence that could be useful to an enemy, not the enemy, but an enemy. And if this were to happen today, that distinction wouldn't arise because there is a discrete offence of having information which you pass to a foreign intelligence agency. Yeah. So if you're spying for, let's say, China, you will be in contact with Chinese intelligence, and therefore you are working for a foreign intelligence agency.
I mean, frankly, I don't want someone passing intelligence they're not supposed to pass to France. I mean, they seem obvious. But the specifics of that law, and these two men who were allegedly accused of this crime were charged with a crime which it had to be an enemy state. And we understand from talking to Tom Tugendhat and reading the reports that the government basically came forward and said that this case no longer meets the evidence threshold, but suggesting that at one point it did, and now it doesn't.
I think that's a load of old cobblers.
Oh, yeah.
And we should never forget that when we're dealing with spooks and spookery, we're dealing with a wilderness of mirrors. Right. We're in the territory of in my father's house there are many mansions. So my take on this is, yes, there is reluctance in government to call China an enemy. Goodness knows why. I mean, everything that China has done in recent years, we think of the £500,000 they gave to Barry Gardiner, the Labour MP. We think of this was the Christine Lee affair. Now, she wasn't convicted of being a spy, but that showed clear Chinese interference. And the former head, the current head of MI6 and the current head of MI5 have both warned that China represents a real and present danger to the security of this country.
I mean, it's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it? And we know, they're making hostile noises about, of course, about Taiwan, also helping Russia in their war effort in Ukraine.
Absolutely so. So what do you have to do to be considered an enemy or a potential enemy?
China is a really rich country. We do a lot of trade with them. We had the Prime Minister sort of desperate to do a big trade deal with China. Again, as it was, I think, in terms of investment, I mean, it was absolute, tuppence down the back of the sofa for both our economy and the Chinese economy. But China's basically bought up a lot of our universities, the funding they're throwing in, trying to buy up a lot of our MPs, spying on us, intimidating and even murdering, as Putin has done in Russia, Chinese dissidents in this country. I mean, again, what do they need to do? Why doesn't our government want to call them an enemy state?
I think the answer is a political one, not an intelligence one. I think our spooks are making us aware that China is a real threat to us here in the UK, both domestically and on the international front. But that economic growth and the drive for economic growth to fund our government's programme is so vital that we have to turn a blind eye to what the government would consider indiscretions on the part of Chinese.
And there's still some talk about this Chinese super embassy being built right near the Tower of London.
Well, that's a disgrace.
On the routes over cables which go to the city. I mean, everyone who's got half a brain has said this is an absolute madness, and yet the government have sort of called in the planning decision to go, oh, maybe we will, maybe we won't. And there's reports at the weekend that the Chinese had basically cut off the water and electricity to Britain's embassy in Beijing.
It would be the largest embassy in China anywhere, probably in the world, but certainly in Europe, and it would become the headquarters of Chinese intelligence work throughout Europe. So it is complete and utter madness, and because it is complete and utter madness, they don't want the opportunity to interrogate, for the Parliament to interrogate the decision that they've taken. That's always a sign of weakness. And to say that, well, officially China isn't an enemy under the 1911 Official Secrets Act, that's a real cop-out.
No, but that's just semantics, isn't it? But this thing, what is the bit I don't understand? Look, we've got a government that has, sold out, Diego Garcia military base, the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. I mean, utterly unnecessary under any international ruling whatsoever. Basically, for want of a better expression, kowtowing to the Chinese on this, whether it's over the embassy, whether it's over this particular alleged spy case. I don't understand why any national government... I don't care whether I voted for a government or not. I like to think the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, the Security, the Home Office Minister would put the safety of British people first and the security of our nation, and they're not doing that.
The delivery of security is the primary duty of any government. Indeed, Margaret Thatcher, I think, was right when she said it is by far the most important duty of any government. All the stuff that follows, health, social services, disability benefits, they're all way down the list. So it has got to do this. And we all understand the government needs growth because otherwise it's going to go bankrupt.
But not at the cost of selling our safety down the river.
No, because just as in other discussions, we must never put security below liberty. When it comes to the economy, we must not put it above security. We need security, we need a good economy, we need liberty, but we also need to secure our freedoms from those people who are undermining it all the time.
Absolutely. Professor Anthony Lee, security intelligence expert, thank you so much for joining us. Claire Pearsall, it is astonishing. This is kind of almost treasonous, treacherous levels of behaviour by this government. I really do believe that.
Yeah, it really is. That's why they need to go. We need to get them out.
Well, we know to get them out.
I know,
but I really struggle. I mean, I'm sorry, but Jonathan Powell, who was an advisor to Blair, he's a clever guy. He really knows his stuff. I'm genuinely scared that they are making decisions like this, worrying about a possible trade deal we're never going to have, and putting that over our security of our country. It's terrifying. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Plenty more besides. Brendan O'Neill up next. More of your calls. This is Talk Home and Common Sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Whether you're listening on DB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, it is fantastic to have your company. Lots of you getting in touch. I've got a load of stuff to talk about at the top of this hour, but I'm just going to go straight to the questions so we can get as much many of your calls on air. Because police are to get powers to ban repeat protests after pro-Palestine rallies. They're not pro-Palestine rallies, they're pro-Hamas, anti-Jewish rallies. Let's call them what they are. They went ahead. Friday, Saturdays. Thursday. They couldn't stop having rallies and protests, could they? All sodding weekend, and they looked remarkably happy. I wonder why they were happy after 2 people had been murdered in a synagogue attack on Thursday. But they went ahead despite that synagogue attack. Should the protests be banned? Should they be banned a long time ago? Should there be more powers given to the police, or have they got enough powers? They just need to use the powers they've already got. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell us what you think, because obviously we've got a concern about, we have a right to protest, but do you have a right to, call for the annihilation of the Jewish people as you march down the street? I would suggest not. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls to charge the national rate. Text cost 1. Standard network rate message. Before we go to our first guest of this hour, Claire Pistol's still with me, former Conservative Government Advisor. We've been focusing on this, but it is interesting, the conversation we've just been having with Professor Anthony Gleeson about this Chinese, alleged spy trial collapsing. It is interesting how many people who seriously know their stuff on security are saying that is far more significant in terms of what is going on in terms of our government's relationship with China than is what's going on. And here's the thing: we've got a government who have sold us down the river, and British taxpayers and our security by basically handing over the Chagos Islands. Not back to Mauritius. They never owned them, just giving them away. Here you go, we'll pay you a load of money. And China having influence there on the Mauritian government and benefiting. We've got them, collapsing a trial. It does appear into a Chinese trial, possibly likely to approve this big Chinese embassy, the super embassy. But yes, let's make sure that we can really improve our economy by making sure we are the Chinese spying capital of the West. Brilliant. That seems like a good idea. We've got them selling Israel, the only democratic state in the Middle East, and the only Jewish state in the world. 22 in the Arab world alone. We've got them being sold out to Hamas. And to Palestinian Authority, Fatah, in recognition of a Palestinian state. This is a government that is not on the side of either the British people or British security, which should pretty much be the same thing. I am genuinely getting worried about what their thinking is, what their mindset is, and to who do they owe their allegiance? Because I don't think it is the British people.
No, I don't think it is us, for a start. They are really scared of...
They're scary.
They're scary. They are scared of China. They are scared of offending them, which I don't understand. The fact is that the Chinese super embassy will make us the spy capital of the world. We've seen what happens when Hong Kong nationals speak out against the behaviour of the Chinese government. They disappear.
One
they
even
get
being
chased up.
snatched into Chinese embassy grounds at one point.
But also... and this was in the UK. So it's not just in China that this happens, or in Hong Kong. It happens here on UK turf. We shouldn't be allowing this, and we should be calling them out. But of course, Keir Starmer don't want to upset anybody. We want the investment. But I think that you have to go a little bit more hardline.
Yeah, and we don't even call out, radical Islamic preachers. We know they're the biggest threat to us in this country in terms of the radicalism as the biggest terror threat. Most people on the watch list, the most number of deaths, most number of terror attacks. And again, but it's all attack on all faiths and all communities, community cohesion, don't look back in anger and all that nonsense. Stop. I don't think that's where the British people are right now. No. I really, really don't. Right, well, look, let's go to my first guest in this hour. Brendan O'Neill, I'm delighted to say, joins us, chief political writer at Spiked Online. And Brendan, every now and then I think we do find we disagree on some things, and I'm quite relieved to find that we have some different opinions, but you have been an absolute I mean, trailblazer on this issue, calling an awful lot of the issues out in terms of the security of this country and particularly the Islamist threat, far before most commentators have done. All credit to you on that, but it's not very nice being proved right, is it?
No, not at all. And, you know, when I hear people saying the real problem in this country is the far right, or the real problem is middle-aged white men, that's what we hear from Gary Neville and people like that, I just want to give them a clap around the ear, because the fact of the matter is, of course, there's a problem with the far right. Of course, there's a problem with other forms of extremism, but radical Islam is the biggest threat that this country faces. I think 100 people now in the past 20 years have been killed in radical Islamist violent attacks. That's a really large number of people. That includes children as well, of course. We've got to take it more seriously, but we live under a political establishment that not only doesn't want to talk about radical Islam, it won't even say the I word. It never even says Islamist. You know, they won't call.
It's got nothing. No, it's got nothing to do with Islam. They'll say. I mean, they genuinely. It's not. I mean, it is a radical political ideology that has grown in recent decades, and there are, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of Muslims who live completely, you know, peaceful, normal lives, are no threat to anybody. But pretend that there isn't this radicalised, dangerous political ideological Islam, and that it's not massively influential across the Middle East and Africa is madness. I mean, it's head in sand stuff.
Complete madness and complete moral cowardice, just a real institutionalized cowardice where they can't even name the problem that we face, far less come up with solutions for tackling it. I remember after the Manchester Arena bombing in 2017, no one would say the word Islamist. Never mind Islam, no one would say Islamist, and it was obviously an Islamist attack. I remember Andy Burnham back then said there's no room in our city for extremists. And
there is.
And Morrissey at the time said, an extremist what? Was it an extremist cat? You know, what are we talking about here?
And he wrote a song also about how, you know, I'm absolutely nonsense, and the idiots say, or something, you know, don't look back in anger. You know, I'm absolutely going to look back in anger. I remember saying that on air on this very station that very day. I'll absolutely be angry about it. It is extraordinary, isn't it? Look, we've found out more and more and more about this this killer. Thankfully dead himself. Hooray! Let's celebrate. You should sometimes celebrate some people being dead. It's a good thing. Jihad al-Shami will no longer be able to be a threat to people. Syrian-born himself, brought to this country, he was very young, came with his parents, became a British citizen. He had followed a hate preacher who called Jews animals. He had been massively radicalised online. He'd been very open to many people about his radicalisation. He had made death threats to the local MP. It was reported to the police. Police didn't even bother interviewing him. He was out on bail for an alleged rape. I mean, the clues were there, and yet not on a watch list, not interviewed by the police. I mean, even the fact that his father, who had come here and been, you know, presumably had British nationality and still here, Faraj al-Shami, working in the NHS, he had publicly, openly on his social media praised the October 7th attackers as heroic. I mean, it's not like people are even plotting secretly, quietly in their bedrooms. They're open and blatant about it, whether it's on social media, whether it's on the streets at these marches. And we're told that we're a tolerant society, but we shouldn't be tolerant of intolerance, should we?
We certainly should not be tolerant of any Islamist plotting or anti-Semitism or any form of hatred that can lead to violence. And that's exactly what we had in this story that we've seen in over the past few days. You know, some people are still saying we can't be sure what his motive was. I mean, his name is Jihad, and he went to a synagogue to commit an extraordinary act of violence. I think we can be pretty clear.
On the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. I mean, there were clues, Brendan. There were clues.
There were clues. This was an act of radical Islamist anti-Semitic terrorism. But you know, Julia, you make a really important point, which is that a lot of this stuff is happening out in the open. It's right out there. And the reason that can happen is because there has been the slow burn of anti-Semitism in this country for the past 2 years. We've seen synagogues being graffitied. We've seen a Jewish girl had a bottle thrown at her in Stamford Hill. Jewish kids at the Jewish Free School in London were told to take off their blazers on the way to and from school so no one would know they were Jews. There's been a spike in anti-Semitic attacks. It's gone on, and some of us, including you, begged officialdom to take this more seriously, begged the opinion forming classes to talk about it more, and too many of them turned a blind eye. And then the end result is this horrific act we saw in Manchester.
And that's the thing, that is the end result. It was always going to happen. I wrote a piece to The Sun. I know I've read some pieces you've written as well. You know, I don't know why Prime Minister was saying he was shocked. You know, I wasn't shocked. Everyone knew it was a question of when and not if. But this is the thing. When you've got people like even, you know, cabinet ministers, you know, like David Lammy talking about genocide in Israel, when you've got the lies that are on the BBC, Sky and ITV, but I hold BBC particularly to account because we have to pay their wages and because they are such a trusted international broadcaster that when they say things, it comes with more weight and gives succor to everyone else. When they push the, let's face it, the Palestinian agenda over and above the facts and report the war in Gaza as if it's some uniquely horrific experience, when they know it's not. It's war, and in fact that the ratio of civilian deaths to combatant deaths is actually one of the lowest ever. I mean, I know there has been a war with a lower death rate of civilians compared to those who are armed, and they know all this, and they repeat Hamas talking points. They play their videos and they play along with it. They create an environment in this country and across Europe and in America, on campuses, on the streets, everywhere, where it becomes acceptable to be angry at the people who support an Israeli state, a Jewish state, because they're the nasty genocidal baby killers who are starving people en masse. And one of the things shouted by Jihad al-Shami when we were trying to get into the synagogue in Manchester, and these brave souls were holding the door against him, was you know, this is for the children, this is the babies. Now, how much responsibility do, you know, government ministers like David Lammy, who frankly the booing and jeering of him when he went to a vigil was absolutely well deserved. How much do the BBC, the ministers and all of those who have played along with Hamas propaganda for the last 2 years, how much responsibility do they have for this?
A huge amount, I would say. And when I read that Jihad al-Shami said that as he was pushing against the door, he said, "This is for the children you killed," it chilled me to my bone, because I've written a few pieces over the past 2 years basically saying to everyone, please don't resuscitate the blood libel about Jews killing children. Please stop doing that, because we've seen demonstration after demonstration at which people have holding up placards saying the Jewish state murders children. We've seen demonstrations where people have carried dolls covered in blood and held them up in the faces of Orthodox Jews in Essex and other parts of the country. We've seen people breathe life back into the idea that the Jews take pleasure in killing kids. And the BBC has helped that along, because they broadcast the lie that thousands of kids would die in the next 36 hours if aid didn't get into Gaza.
That was a claim made by a big charity head, but they didn't question it at all.
They didn't question it. It went out. Everyone believed it. It spread like wildfire through the internet, and it wasn't true. There's this constant refrain that the Jewish state is uniquely murderous, uniquely barbaric, and uniquely invested in the death of children. Now, people say there's a difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, but let me tell you this. If you demonize the world's only Jewish state in that way, that will impact on Jewish people. You can't go around calling the Jewish nation the most barbarous nation on earth and then be surprised when Jewish civilians and citizens across the world get it in the neck as well.
Here's my question. When you get, I'm not going to name names, although I probably should, because, sue me for libel, because I reckon I'd win this one. But when some very senior figures at the BBC who are on air every morning, every evening, and really, I'm talking long-standing presenters, people who've worked in war, as war reporters, they've seen every horror under the sun. When they report on what's happening in Gaza, not from Gaza, and they make complaints about that, but it's a war, it's a war zone. Whenever we've seen people in war zones before at the front line, and it's a tiny slip of land, it's all the front line. By the way, they've always been embedded with allied forces rather than actually being able to roam freely. That's not happening in most wars. When they report on this stuff as if it is a uniquely appalling war with unique suffering, when, you know, just down the road you've got, you know, Yemen and Sudan and everywhere else where people are being slaughtered indiscriminately by government forces. When they do that, do you think they know that they're lying, or do you think they are now so caught up in that, you know, the virtue signalling, flag waving, middle class lefty viewpoint, that they don't even realise that they are just repeating Hamas propaganda? Because I don't believe that they think what they're saying is true. I don't believe that people who've been war reporters for 20 years or however long don't know the realities on the ground.
It's so hard to tell, isn't it? Because it's possible that they've been so swept along by their own sense of self-righteousness that they really do believe it, that they really have become unable to see the reality, the truth, the more complex picture, that, you know, even to look coolly at what happened on the 7th of October and how barbaric that was.
Were women raped? I mean, God, we haven't got a video of the actual women being raped, they claim. I think there actually are videos of that, which Hamas put out themselves, but there we are. But we have a questioning of things that are so obviously that did happen. It's terrifying.
Yeah. And, you know, the BBC, if you look at the BBC, for example, I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool BBC basher. I think it does some good stuff, and I think it does some rubbish stuff. But what it's done in relation to Israel-Gaza is unforgivable, because what it has done, it has pumped into the homes of this country every night for 2 years the following two messages. Firstly, this is the only war on earth. It's the only one you should think about. Nothing else is happening. Don't look at anything else. And the second thing it has said is that this is the worst war ever. It is uniquely barbarous. Children are dying left, right, and centre. It's an absolute disgrace. It's given that dishonest message, that skewed message, to people across the UK every night for 2 years. That is an unforgivable disavowal of its responsibility to tell the truth, and it hasn't told the truth.
That's the thing, isn't it? What do you make of this bid to ban repeated protests by, you know, the pro-Hamas crew, which is what they are? Because, you know, you and I are both big advocates of free speech. You are more of a free speech libertarian than I am, even. I for a good year, defended the right of these protests to go ahead. But it's more and more become obvious to me, even during that first year after October the 7th, the fact that the first march was organised while the massacre in Israel was still taking place. But you know, mothers were, were clutching their children being burnt to death in their kibbutz homes while they would go, oh, can we have a march? Because we're worried about Gaza. And I had no idea if soldiers had even set foot into Gaza at that point. But they carried on. The anti-Semitic, you know, as you said, that the placards, the chants, you know, globalise the Intifada, from the rivers to the sea. That means both of those mean kill Jews and annihilate Israel. Should they be banned, or do the police have enough powers already to be banned, or should they bring in more laws? Where do you stand on all of that?
I'm not in favour of banning them, and it kind of sticks in my throat to say that, because I think they are obscene and obnoxious, and I think we have to be honest. I think they are anti-Semitic marches.
Yep,
that's what they are. And you know what? I think it's dawning on more people that that's the reality. You know, for 2 years now, these people have said we're on the right side of history. We are perfectly righteous. We are marching against genocide and for the poor people of Gaza, and they've got away with everything. But I think more and more ordinary people, even non-political people who I know, are starting to say, you know, what's going on here? Why are they still marching? Why did they march on the day that 2 Jews were killed in Manchester? More and more people are starting to ask that question. But the reason I'm not in favour of banning them is just because I think that would give the state too much power. And if it has the power to ban repeat protests, we know what it will go for next. It will go for pink ladies standing outside migrant hotels. It will go for those who are protesting against causes that the government is really scared about, like the question of migration and so on. So I'm worried about state overreach as a solution.
But here's the thing, though. I mean, we know we've seen two-tier justice, two-tier policing. We've seen an awful lot of that in the last couple of years. There's no doubt at all in my mind that if there was the same level of criminality and arrests and, you know, and outrageous racist slurs, that were being held up on banners and behaviour of the people, and it was on the Tommy Robinson, Night at the Kingdom style march, that would definitely be banned. We know that the Home Office already has the powers to ban marches. We know that 13 marches were banned over a 7-year period up to 2015. 10 of those 13 were EDL and other far-right marches. So we know they can do it if they want, if they believe there is going to be, breaches of the peace, public order and all of that. The only reason we don't see mass violence and trouble at these marches is because the police, they basically provide as you go, feel free, carry on walking past service, rather than actually policing. If they policed these marches in the way that they should, as the law dictates, these wouldn't be peaceful marches. We can see that. Matthew Syed, who's absolutely lovely man, and very couldn't meet someone more polite and more reasonable. He said, amazing piece in the papers the weekend, where he went along to the march on Saturday and was asking people, why are you here, and do you think, asking perfectly reasonable journalistic questions, and he's got a very nice manner. He's not a trouble stirrer. He said the aggression, the anger that he heard, he's left in no doubt at all. He spoke to 24 people, and he said, 22 of those 24 people were aggressive and angry and were basically shouting, let's face it, anti-Semitic things. We wouldn't allow this about any other group. If someone organised a march where they were saying the same things and had the same level of aggression about black people or about Muslims, it wouldn't be allowed. So why? Why is this allowed?
It's funny, I walked past one of these demonstrations a few weeks back, and I'm not quite as polite as Matthew Syed. So
yeah, I couldn't go because I know that I would not. I would end the day in a police cell. I know that.
Well, I screamed out "F Hamas" just to a bunch of people. I got hit. Someone hit me with his walking stick, just an old fella, so it wasn't that bad. I got surrounded by a bunch of young lads in keffiyehs who were pushing me and telling me to F off. That was the response to me saying something about Hamas. So I turned around to these people and said, hold on, so do you support Hamas? Of course they do support Hamas. It's a rhetorical question. But you're absolutely right that the police already have powers, and the police, I'm afraid to say, I know they've got a hard job and they've got lots on their plate, but they have behaved badly in relation to these demonstrations. Do you remember on one of the early demonstrations shortly after 7th of October, there was a gang of radical Islamists chanting for jihad against the Jewish state? Yeah. And the police put out a statement saying, well, jihad can have many different meanings. It means struggle, it means sacrifice. They made excuses for incitement to violence rather than policing it. Yeah. So I do think they already have powers to stop a breach of the peace, to stop people inciting violence, but they haven't used those powers on these marches, and that's what worries me most.
As is always the case, actually, when any government, and the Tories and Labour, they're just as bad as each other, let's bring in more powers. Nearly always it's a case of the powers they've already got not being used. Can I ask you just finally about Gary Neville? We had all the issues, didn't we, with Gary Lineker, who's working at the BBC, giving his tuppence worth, knowing absolutely sod all about anything other than football. I don't mind him giving his views, but he just can't work at the BBC while he spouts his absolute nonsense while I'm having to pay his wages, and he's got a contract saying he can't spout political views. But Sky Sports got a problem now with Gary Neville, who's always in trouble. Whether it's the courts or with the newspapers or whoever, over things he said. But he's at £1.1 million a year. There's a boycott call against Sky Sports for continuing to employ him over what people are calling a racist outburst. We did this long video about the union and the England flags that are being hung up everywhere, and saying this is divisive. This is posted, by the way, since the attack on the Manchester synagogue, and he said this is all being, the division is being created by angry middle-aged white men. Should he? Is it okay for him to say that? Is that racist? If he said angry middle-aged Muslim men or angry middle-aged black men, would people be defending him? And should Sky Sports face a boycott?
I think it is racist. He's judging people by their race, and he's making a sweeping generalization about a group of people with a particular skin color. Imagine if after the Manchester synagogue attack, someone, me or you, were to say, the problem is young brown men. We wouldn't say that because we don't believe that. We think the problem is a certain group of radicalized people that exist in this community and in other communities too. So he made a sweeping generalization about a certain race, a certain group, and I think that's a problem. But again, it speaks to that cowardice, just that unwillingness among these champagne socialists to face up to the reality of the divisions that have been caused by multiculturalism, the fact that there is a particular problem of radicalism among young Muslims, and we should be allowed to say it.
Yep.
It's this racial paternalism. He feels he has to protect Muslim community from criticism or black community from criticism.
Yeah.
That's a kind of racial paternalism in and of itself. You know, middle-aged white men get so much flack, but they're not actually doing the bad stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that most people are actually terrified of the middle-aged white men, you know, coming at them in the streets and attempting to kill them in their places of worship. Brendan O'Neill covered a lot of ground there. Chief political writer at Spiked Online. He's also the author of the brilliant book After the Pogrom, 7th of October, Israel and the Crisis of Civilization. Claire Pearsall, a long interview. What do you have to say?
No, really, really interesting. And I think the point that I take away was also something that Tom Tugendhat mentioned about the police not applying the laws that they have and making political decisions.
They always do have.
And it's much more obvious now, and I think that it's been brought to a head over this weekend.
They're afraid of clashing. They're afraid of clashing with a bunch of extremist Muslims on the streets of London. That's what they're. That's what. They're not worried about clashing with the sort of the white middle class, the Phoebes, and they're not worried about that, or the former vicars. They don't mind that. What they're worried about is it's going to look bad because they're so worried about institutional racism. They're so worried about that they are absolutely terrified of actually doing the policing.
They need to just man up and actually do the job.
But it's very
simple.
But the thing is, we haven't got enough police. There'll be riots in the streets. But so far, we're told these are peaceful. They're peaceful protests.
So why would they be?
But they're only peaceful if you don't actually police them.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's like saying a guy walking around with a knife in a pub. Well, he hasn't attacked anyone. So as long as no one minds him wandering around with a knife in the pub, then he's peaceful, isn't he? But that's a fair analogy because it's basically, we're going to do whatever the hell we want on the streets of London, intimidating whoever we want. And by the way, I'm not Jewish. It still intimidates me because I know I can't walk next to that and speak at march and speak freely. I know that I would be under attack, and that means it's not safe. And they are intimidating people, and they know what they're doing, and they are bloody loving it. Yeah. They know what they're doing, and they are basically taking over the streets. And I'm sorry, no, the police need to steal back the streets for the majority of law-abiding people. 12:28 is time. We're going to take a break. We're going to get lots of your calls up. We're going to talk to you as well. We're also going to be talking to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, and we're going to be talking about the latest offering to young people trying to get on the housing ladder, this time from the Tories, who aren't in power, but never mind. We'll find out what they're going to do anyway. This is Talk.
They've always been hate marches. They're deliberately targeting Jews, and after the Jews, us. then we're next. This is a case of they're trying to take over the country. These people should now, the marches should be banned, but unfortunately we have a Home Secretary who is a practicing Muslim herself, so she's not necessarily the most unbiased, but apart from that, these people should now be arrested. They should be courts set up overnight.
This is not, in no way, this is about people of the UK having a problem with Jewish people. That has gone, it is a perfect example of an integrated community.
Yeah.
Exactly, as much as we joked about that before. This is different. The anti-Semitism coming from elsewhere, isn't it? It is coming from people who may have a religious, fundamentally based on a religious belief, taken to the extreme, that has a problem with Jewish people. And it's on these shores. It's in our country, isn't it? That's what we learn. That's what the Canary is telling us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:32 is the time. In a few moments we're going to talk to the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, live from the Conservative Party conference. Lucky him. At conference and getting to talk to me. But let's talk right now with you. Lots of calls coming in, 0344 499 1000. I mean, there's so much to talk about today. Let's go to Phil, who is in London. I want to talk about these protests. And Phil, do you think that the government should bring in more powers for the police to stop these protests?
Yes, definitely. I just can't get... First of all, I want to thank you for your wonderful programme, Julia.
Oh, we do our best.
Yes, you do, because you're achieving so much more that people aren't seeing, and you're honest with it. I just wanted to talk about the people need to sit back and just think what we're actually... I think if somebody looked down from outer space, they'll think we're all crackers. We are negotiating now dead bodies for murderers. That's what it's
That's the Hamas peace plan. Can I ask, can you talk a little bit closer to your phone, just so I can hear you a little bit better?
Yes.
But that's the thing. That's the peace plan is basically 20 live hostages, 28 believed to be dead hostages, and then return for hundreds of people in prison in Israel, including some people responsible for outrageous terrorist murderous attacks.
Yeah. And there are so many things I could talk to you about, but that sort of just sums up the mindset of what's gone on the last 2 years. I mean, what world are we living in where we're talking about wanting dead bodies back to so their loved ones can bury them? And that's what it's down to. And there is so much more.
But here's the thing: it's not even people taking a on the one hand, on the other hand issue when it comes to Israel and Hamas. It's Israel is a genocidal country that is waging an unnecessary war, killing civilians, not just wantonly but deliberately, and mass starvation and famine. I mean, it doesn't matter how many facts come out, people will not accept them. And Hamas gets to put out their propaganda. It's all over the BBC, ITV, Sky, half the newspapers, and is being preached on the streets of our capital city and everywhere else in the last few days as well. How do you think that happened, Phil? Because I thought we were better than that.
Unfortunately, it is loads of people won't agree, but it is pure anti-Semitism. It is simply down to that. It has to be. I mean, I can't talk about the BBC because that is so bad, and I won't mention his name, but you know the editor was in Israel during the time of 2007. Now he's the independent editor, and now the senior editor, and has been promoted. And what he did was just horrendous. 4 weeks after the 3 or 4 weeks, he had the Alfita Hospital, however you pronounce it, and then there was the bomb in the car park, and within 30 seconds he reported that Israel was there, and it was a misfire.
This was Jeremy Bowen, and when asked about whether he regrets basically passing on Hamas propaganda, he said no, he was doing the right thing at the time, and it's just hasn't even apologised for it, which is just blatant, basic, reporting fail. I mean, in my journalism college, you would definitely have been failed for that, that's for sure. Phil, I mean, what is the solution? Do you think it is basically stop the protest? Because I have a funny feeling these people will be on the streets anyway.
Yes, I don't think you can win. I don't think you can win. Whether you stop the protest, there'll be a protest, and you stop the protests. I think you've got to just arrest where you can. It's a no-win situation, to be honest.
But we haven't got a choice about whether we win or not. That's the thing when people say this is. I believe genuinely, it's like with Israel, with Gaza. I think this is existential for the future of our country, because if we're going to allow this level of intolerance, Batley School, grammar school teacher onwards, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. We can't carry on with this. This needs to be the and enough. We're done now. What's the solution? You think nothing?
Education, banning bad press like Jeremy Bowen, and as I said to you, that Biden was getting on the plane for a summit with Egypt, Qatar, and everything. It was then cancelled. That will have stopped the war, hopefully. And his bad reporting is horrific.
I think it's part of the problem. I absolutely do. Phil, thank you for that. Just Claire Pistol, just before we get to the call, this thing. He's saying you can't win. We don't have a choice. That's like saying, well, what can you do about the Nazis? Yeah. I mean, well, here's an I think. Let's not invite them to come and live in our country with us. Would that be a good start, everybody?
There is that we need to be able to protect the people who are in this country, the Jewish community, Christians, Catholics, be it what they are.
Can us atheists get a look in?
Yeah, well,
By the way, the Islamist fascists want to kill me too, because I'm a heathen.
Does that me as well?
Yes, you. Yeah.
Awesome.
We're all done for, folks.
Excellent, but the police need to be just using the powers that they have. The country needs to be protecting its borders properly, and we need to be getting rid of people who shouldn't be here.
And well, I think people who are here who hold jihadist views, and I'm afraid, unfortunately, it's not. Of course, it's not the majority of Muslims living in this country. The vast majority, absolutely not, getting on with their daily lives, same as everyone else. Yeah. But there is a very, very large minority, particularly among younger people, who do hold those views. Well, that's no longer it. Well, it never was acceptable to me, as most people. That needs to stop, and whatever we need to do to stop it needs to be done, because it's us or them. I mean, it's how many different terror attacks. We don't even get to hear about all the terror attacks that are thwarted. Okay,
no,
and how many? I suppose lone wolves and not lone wolves. I mean, who knows? But 6 people are still under arrest, aren't they, in relation to this attack on the Manchester synagogue? Let's go to Ashley, who's also in London. Actually, very London-based calls this afternoon. Ashley's in London. What do you want to say?
Afternoon. I was going to say, just Gary Neville, I'm a United supporter, so it absolutely breaks me to see, as a Jewish guy, and listen to him, that after such a terrible attack, the only thing he can do is try and justify by saying that it is us white people who...
Angry, middle-aged white men.
Which I'm one of those as well, by the way. I accept that. I'm angry and I'm middle-aged, but I'm not anyway influencing these people. But to turn around and try and justify that when someone's just lost someone, when the guy's name is Jihad, it's very clear what community, and that doesn't mean the whole community are responsible. However, you've got the BBC that are turning around and saying, I think 3 days later they said, we now feel it could be a Islamic attack. And you're thinking, really?
Shocker.
But which and for him to put the blame on that makes us feel like, well, hold on a minute, that's not what's happening. And how can you disrespect us so much? And also the general public. I mean,
I'm just amazed they didn't just say he had mental health problems. Genuinely. I mean, how many times have we heard that? So these people going around beheading people in France and Germany as well. No, mental health problems, are they? Or are they jihadist lunatics?
They actually said that, his father doesn't want, basically wants to be left to wants the family left in their privacy, which I understand that under normal circumstances. But if you look at the background of this chap and you look at his father and what his father says, is it no doubt that his father has to take some accountability for his
father and his father celebrated the October the 7th massacre. He celebrated the people who carried it out as heroes.
He's not getting it from a white, angry, middle-aged man. He may be getting it from an angry father of his who is of whatever belief he is.
Absolutely. Ashley, thank you very much indeed for that. And Claire, this is the thing, isn't it? Look, I think the British public have gone on a journey, and I think we are dragging, kicking and screaming our politicians with along behind us. Nigel Farage, first to the gate by a long way in terms of tackling this issue, and then the Tories, Labour, and they're getting there. They get slowly and surely getting there. Whether they actually carry through anything, but at the end of the day, we don't want people coming to this country who wish us ill. We don't want people who are already in this country who've come here. Who wish us ill to be allowed to stay here. We don't want people who are illegal. We want maybe who commits a crime. We don't want people who support jihad. We don't want them on the streets intimidating other people. These are these are such basic requirements from a law-abiding majority. This is not intolerance. And we say we're a tolerant country. No, when you tolerate intolerance, you become an intolerant country.
Yeah, you do. And I just think that we should never have, the government should never have allowed these the protest marches to go on for 2 years with blatant anti-Semitism.
Or you allow them to go ahead, but then you go in and you arrest. You get the riot police out. Yeah, let's have a riot on the street, shall we? Let's show them for what they are.
But that was always my point, that you should go after the organisers as well as those people who are breaking the law, because if you then make examples of them, do you know what? Perhaps the behaviour will be better, and perhaps those marches.
No, I'd like to know where the people are who are the radicalised.
I'd rather have them behind bars.
I'd rather have them behind bars. No, but I'd rather have them. A lot of the people. I'd rather just have them not in the country, frankly. But there we are. 12:41 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:44 is the time. We're just waiting for the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. Everyone runs late at party conference, don't they? Let's go straight to my next guest then, property expert, political commentator, and of course you'll know him well here on Talk. Russell Quirk joins us. Very, very good afternoon to you, Russell.
Afternoon, how are you?
Very well indeed, lovely to see you. Let's talk about something rather more cheery than most of the conversations we've had today. Let's have a talk about this Tory party announcement about yet more help, because we've had loads of schemes over the years to help young people get on the housing ladder. What does that actually involve?
Yeah, so in the past we've seen a thing called Help to Buy, haven't we, which is this kind of incentive, this taxpayer subsidy that has gone to not just first-time buyers in the past, but general buyers to try and incentivise them to buy often new-build properties. So this is from Mel Stride, obviously part of His Majesty's opposition, who, and this might seem a bit gimmicky, Julia, had incentivised, big inverted commas, incentivised potential first-time buyers in the future by saying you can allocate your national insurance payments to a deposit on a home. Now, apart from the fact that this is very, very gimmicky, The problem with this, it's clearly something that the Conservatives have kind of, grabbed out the bottom of the kind of policy drawer, given that conference is ongoing, desperate to try and appeal to voters, and particularly young voters, because, of course, the average first-time buyer is kind of less than 34 years old.
Yeah.
The problem with this is, apart from it being a gimmick, is, of course, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost all taxpayers a total of about £2.8 billion. And I think we have to question, don't we, why should people that aren't first-time buyers subsidise first-time buyers earning 30 or 40?
But also, they said they wanted. I think they wanted to cut. They say they're going to fund this with like £23 billion cut in the benefits bill. But again, the whole point of this, we need to make cuts to get people off the public payroll generally, and not, if you can afford to look after yourself, you don't get any money from other taxpayers. But it seems to me they're saying it's going to reward for work. Well, the reward for work is pay. And having a future and having a point to your life. That's the reward for work. I don't know why, but also again, like Help to Buy, all this does is make it try and get it easier for people who already are on the way on the housing ladder to get on it a bit sooner and to
we know that this, like a lot of initiatives from the Conservatives particularly, is demand led. So it's helping.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. The one thing, if you want young people to be able to get on the housing ladder, you need to build more houses. Now this government,
as you and I have rehearsed many times.
I mean, this government has said they're going to build 1.5 million. They won't. The last government said they were going to do 250,000 a year.
Julia,
they didn't.
Let me tell you how adrift this government is. They built half the targeted amount in the first 12 months of their tenure. Yep. So only about 170,000 new homes were built by the Labour government in their first 12 months. They are way off. I will eat my entire wardrobe of clothes if this government manages to build.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And again, as you say, it's another gimmick. Russell Quirk, we'll have to leave it there. Chris Philbers on the other line. We're going to take a quick break. Russell Quirk there. Thank you very much indeed. Let's take a quick break.
%37% of Pakistanis in this country have first cousin marriage, compared to 1% everywhere else.
Right.
They only account for 3% of births in this country, but they account for 33% of birth defects.
Yeah, and that costs the NHS money, dealing with all these
the appointments, huge burden.
They all go on
PIP,
and they basically have to get money from the state for life.
And why on earth do we still allow first cousin marriage? You know, it should be banned outright. We don't.
Yeah.
Well, when that story broke, the public, they did a poll. When that story broke, the public thought it was illegal already.
They've always been hate marches. They're deliberately targeting Jews, and after the Jews, us, then we're next. This is a case of they're trying to take over the country. These people should now, the marches should be banned, but unfortunately we have a Home Secretary who is...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Time is 12:50. Let's go straight to the Conservative Party conference in Manchester right now, to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp MP. Good afternoon to you, Chris.
Good afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much for joining us. Can I ask you, first question, let's go straight to it. Should the government bring in more powers to basically ban the protests we've seen on our streets every fortnight, often even more than that in the last 2 years, which can claim to be pro-Palestinian, but appear to be more pro-Hamas? Should they bring in more powers, and should they ban those protests?
Yes, I think they should bring in more powers. I do actually support what the Home Secretary said yesterday. Where I agree, I will say so. I think introducing a so-called cumulative impact test, where you look at the impact the protests are happening if they go on week after week after week after week, the impact on public order, excuse me, and also the potentially intimidatory impact on other communities. I think it is reasonable that that gets taken into account when the police decide whether or not to let these marches go ahead. So yes, I do support that.
What about women, for instance, protesting week in, week out about trans activists taking women's and girls' rights and putting their safety at risk? What if they claimed, the trans activists claimed, we're being intimidated, and there was a protest again and again? Couldn't the same powers be used by a Labour government, indeed, let's face it, a Tory government or any other government too, to stop those protests going ahead? Isn't this a slippery slope? Isn't this a worry?
Well, look, I think you've got to obviously look at the impact the marches or any protest actually have. And as I understand it, this is a decision and a judgment made by the police in the first instance, not by the government.
Do we trust the police's judgment? Do we trust
well,
their
it's probably
judgment?
better to have it not done by politicians. Well, it's probably better to have it done not by politicians for obvious reasons. But obviously, as whoever's deciding, as they look at any individual set of circumstances, as is the case now, actually, they've got to obviously weigh up the disruption being caused, or any intimidation that might be caused, or disruption to public order, versus obviously the right to protest and free speech. And you'll have seen under the existing powers, under the Public Order Act, the police do actually very rarely indeed, ever actually ban a protest, which they can do at the moment.
But they can.
If it's going to cause
Exactly.
serious
They've got
disruption.
the power. They've got the power to do that. And the only reason we don't have serious trouble at these supposedly pro-Palestinian but really pro-Hamas marches is because the police don't go in. They don't tackle people who have got swastikas on. I mean, often they're arrested after the fact. They do very softly policing. They don't put the helmets and the riot shields up like they do for anything that seemed to be on the right. If they were policed in the same way as every other march was policed, where there was potential for threat and mass arrest, it would be very different, wouldn't it? These aren't peaceful marches.
Well, I think wherever anyone at any march, but including the pro-Palestine ones, does anything which is illegal, whether that's inciting racial hatred, whether it's carrying signs that express support for Hamas or any of that stuff, then my view is the police should act on the spot. And I've repeatedly made that point to the Metropolitan Police. I don't think it's good enough to say, I will wait and deal with it later based on CCTV footage. I think they should take action right away. And if at any point they hold back because they're worried about the reaction by the wider crowd, I think that is completely wrong. The police should not be backing off because they're worried about some kind of backlash from the crowd in front of them.
But we know they do. Can I ask you about a Tory policy that's been announced involving deportations? Bit of an arms race going on with the Reform Party, trailed by the Labour Party as well, in terms of how many people can we deport a year? Your party leader, Kemi Badenoch, facing a lot of pressure over her leadership. She's saying 150,000 a year. Would that include, and should that include, the father of the Manchester synagogue attacker? That's Jihad al-Shami is the attacker, named Jihad by his father, who was Syrian-born. And the father, Faraj al-Shami, he called the October 7th attackers 2 years ago heroic on the very day of that massacre. Do we want people like that in this country, and should he be deported?
No, we definitely do not want people like that in this country. Glorifying rape and murder is appalling.
So
now,
he would be deported under your rules?
Yeah, well, assuming he's not a British citizen. If he is a British citizen, that is obviously different.
Can't we take his British citizenship? He's not born here, he's from Syria. Why can't we take his citizenship away from him?
So it depends if he is. It's a complicated question to do with whether he has dual nationality. But if it is possible to, deport him because he is not a British citizen, we should definitely do so. And I said, Julia, very clearly in my speech yesterday that anyone who is not a British citizen, who expresses extremist views, who expresses racial or religious hatred, including anti-Semitism, or expresses support for terrorism, should be deported because they have no place in this country.
And how are you going to do that? There's been lots of criticism of Nigel Farage's plans, so how he's going to deport people. We've got, 1 million plus, I'm sure it's quite a lot more than 1 million, illegal migrants who've arrived here illegally and or overstayed visas. We've got a lot of foreign criminals, even released from prison, we can't deport. What are you actually going to do? This means you're going to get rid of these people? Because a lot of my listeners and my viewers are going to be going, we've heard it all before, you're not going to do it. You had 14 years in power, you were in the Home Office for some of that time. You didn't do it then, why do we think you're going to do it now?
Yeah, because we understand the last government made some serious mistakes on immigration, and we understand a very, very radically different approach is needed. So how are we going to do it? We've got a detailed plan around how we're going to do it, which we published in the last 2 days. By the way, Reform does not have a detailed plan, but it will include leaving the ECHR, which prevented the last government, and actually it's preventing the current government as well, from deporting people that shouldn't be here. So we're going to come out of the ECHR, we've got a proper plan to do that. We're going to establish a removals force with double the budget in the Home Office. We're also, and this is really important, we're going to dismantle the entire legal architecture which has allowed illegal immigrants and foreign criminals to stay in this country. So, for example, we're going to completely abolish the Immigration Tribunal. So no longer will immigration judges make these decisions. The Home Office will simply decide internally. We're going to abolish most judicial review for immigration matters, and we're going to completely abolish legal aid for immigration matters as well, so lawyers aren't on this immigration legal aid gravy train. And by doing all of those things, we're removing all the barriers, and we're going to get rid of the Modern Slavery Treaty as well. We're removing all of the barriers which prevent the government from deporting people that shouldn't be here and foreign criminals. And that will enable us, combined with doubling the budget of the removals team, will enable us to remove 150,000 people a year, starting with illegal immigrants who arrive within a week, then all foreign criminals, and then everybody else that's here illegally, which, as you say, is probably well over 1 million people.
I know you've got to go. I've got about 20 seconds, though, because we've got to you late. Do you understand why a lot of people in my audience will go, that sounds great, Chris Philp, sounds great. We just don't trust you're going to do it.
Well, look, as I said already, Julia, I completely accept, honestly, that the last government made some bad mistakes in this area, let immigration get too high, stayed in the ECHR, and we acknowledge, the Conservative Party under new leadership just honestly acknowledges to you and to your listeners that was a mistake. We've listened, we've understood, we know the last government got it wrong in many areas, and we've now got a plan that isn't only tough, as you'll have heard just now, but we've also done the detailed work that sits behind it, unlike Reform. So we know your listeners and you will know this will actually work in practice.
We'll leave it there. I know you've got to get going. Appreciate your time, Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary. Really